Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks.
I'm Jimmy Wong.
And today we are talking about Duskmourn, House of Horror.
I thought there were many houses. Turns out it's a singular house.
One house. Full of
everyone's
room.
in.
Yeah.
That's
it's
a
very,
crowded place.
It's very Love Island.
Yeah, very Love Island. Rent's very cheap. If Bloomborough was too soft and cuddly for you, Duskmourn is the antidote. I don't know. It's the natural swing of the pendulum in the other direction, I suppose.
Yeah, we're getting creepy and crawly, spooky and scary.
Yay.
Today we are showcasing the scariest of the bunch, the most powerful commanders in Duskmourn. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of those, if you want to pick up any of the cards that we discuss in today's episode, you can do so while supporting the show by going over to cardkingdom.com/command. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of singles and sealed product. It's the perfect place to go when you're building a new deck. Like right now, there's new commanders out.
A lot.
You can get a ton of cards all in one place and get them shipped to you safely and professionally, so you know that the cards that you ordered on the website are the ones that show up in your mailbox. Woo-hoo. We trust Card Kingdom with all of our card buying needs here at the Command Zone, and you can do so too while supporting the show at cardkingdom.com/command.
And when you get those cards, sleeve them up, keep them protected at ULTRAPRO.com/command. In front of us, we have some of the new playmats from Duskmourn House of Horrors. We have a cool hollow foil over here. We got Aminatu over there.
She's back.
Yeah, so if you want to get your commander, usually the face commanders of the boxes, the precons are made into playmats. You also have sleeves, deck boxes, all the things that you would want Duskmourn related and non-Duskmourn related at ultrapro.com/command. They are the game accessories brand that I've trusted my collection to for quite a long time now. I've got all my cards in Ultra Pro binders in the back, and I just love it. I love being able to organize and to have my collection in a way that fits how exactly I want to do it. So if you're into colored binders, they've got you covered. If you're into cool white binders that have the logos, the Mana 8 collection is now out right now, and it's really sweet. I've been looking at it and thinking, do I upgrade my entire collection into those?
So many binders.
The answer is no, but for someone else out there that wants to start a new collection or just upgrade what they got going on currently, Mana 8's a great place to check it out. ultrapro.com/command. They have tons of deals all the time. There's always something going on. You want to sign up for that newsletter if you get a chance, and you'll support the show while getting the stuff you need.
We appreciate it. You can also support the show directly by going over to patreon.com/commandzone. Patrons get all sorts of sweet perks. You get to be on our Discord, hang out with me, Josh, Jimmy, all of the members of our staff and our community, talking about new cards as they come out, upgrading these precons together. There's like channels that are just there to discuss the precons and how you're building new popular commanders from new sets.
Yeah. Ask Rachel for deck building advice.
Yeah.
Ask me and Josh for deck building advice. You want to listen to Rachel, not me.
Ask questions about what happened on game nights or extra turns, behind the scenes stuff. Plus, our patrons get access to extra turns and game nights a day early without ads.
Yeah,
lots of cool perks for joining our community. Plus, we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode, and this one is dedicated to Soon We Low. You rock.
You do rock. Thank you, Soon.
Very cool.
Coming soon, another set in Magic the Gathering. Here we go. It's Duskmourn time.
Are right around the corner.
Right around the corner. Right around the corner in the House of Horror.
As always, there's a ton of commanders that came out in this set. We're not going to take the time to discuss all of them explicitly. We're going to talk about the ones that we think you guys are going to be the most excited about, or you're most likely to see across from you at your table. We are not going to discuss the face commanders for each of the precons. They have their own episodes entirely dedicated to them. So go watch those episodes if you're into a face commander. But today, we've got some very cool ones that we're going to go through.
Yeah, and of course, we may miss some. But that's okay, because you can talk about it in the comment section below, and we expect you to. See you there. Okay, let's just kick it off, because this is going to be a long one. Let's start things off with a Boros commander. And these are alphabetical, I believe, right?
Sure are, yeah.
All right. Nice. No favoritism here at the Command Zone. We have Arabella, Abandoned Doll. Yep, a creepy doll. It's a legendary artifact creature - toy.
Cool.
Just like your Magic cards, they're toys. Red and white, so 2 mana for a 1/3. Whenever Arabella attacks, it deals X damage to each opponent, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. Arabella herself is a 1/3. So she will at least do 1 damage to each opponent and gain you 1 life.
And that's all you want to do.
Yeah, clearly
Just
there's
one.
no way you're not going to do 1,000 damage with this creature out in the battlefield.
I mean, this made me think of Alibu immediately, which is a very powerful artifact commander in Boros that does a similar thing. When she attacks, deals damage equal to the number of tapped artifacts. Of course, it's more difficult to get creatures on the battlefield than artifacts, but it's going to have a similar level of threat assessment in my mind. Luckily, Arabella is only 2 mana, so easy to recast if something does happen to her.
Yeah, I feel like you don't cast Arabella until you can give her haste and swing on the same turn, and it happens like way after you've built out your massive board of power 2 or less creatures.
This is my thinking, is I think you play Arabella on 2, you play a creature, something that makes 3 bodies on 3, you attack, deal a bunch of damage that turn, somebody's gonna remove her soon, and then you build up your board of tokens, and then you play Arabella with haste again after that. Because you do have to expect that people figure out how to answer your 1/3 commander.
Oh, sure. And the moment it does its thing one time and everyone takes 9 damage total around the table, or 12 if you got 4 creatures out and you gain a bunch of life, they're going to go, oh, time to stop that.
That cannot continue, especially on turn 3. But predictably, this deck is going to be full of ways that make creatures that trigger Arabella. So we need to make a ton of 1 and 2 power creatures, right?
Or 0.
Or 0.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that they don't need to attack either. It's just Arabella that has to swing in.
Mm-hmm. First thing that I wanted to talk about was Saradoc, Master of Buckland.
Hey.
He's a halfling. It says whenever Saradoc or another non-token creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, make a 1/1 white halfling creature token.
Woo.
Then you can tap 2 other untapped halflings you control, and Saradoc gets bigger and gains lifelink.
Yeah, we don't care about that part of it so much, but this is great. This doesn't have a restriction of once per turn. It just happens, so you could just be dumping out creatures that are non-tokens, and you're going to get a lot of 1/1s.
I like Saradoc. He's a little bit of a board in a box. He triggers off of your commander, and you can actually use that ability to buff Saradoc after Arabella has triggered, and then you get a little bit of extra bump on damage that turn.
Yeah, if you want to swing with Saradoc as well.
Other good non-token stuff is Anim Pakal, makes a ton of gnome tokens.
Oh, yeah.
You just have to make sure that you stack the Arabella trigger after the Anim Pakal attack trigger.
So you get those first, And the nice thing, again, about Anim Pakal and a lot of these new creatures is that they themselves do not need to attack. It says whenever you attack. I think the first time we really saw that was with Adeline, Resplendent Cathar. We do have some more resplendent people, though. It's Lena, Selfless Champion, just creating more and more tokens. This enters the battlefield to create 1/1 for each non-token creature you control. So there's going to be a decent balance here between tokens and non-tokens, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky thing about this deck is you want kind of board in a box stuff like Anim and Saradoc, and then you also want your Hordling Outbursts or your Hop Tuits, like the 3 mana stuff that just makes 3 bodies. So my thinking is like the earlier in the game, you're spending those non-creature spells. Later in the game, you're rebuilding or you're exploding your board with something like Elena, Selfless Champion, after you've built out the board a little bit.
Yeah.
You do need the board protection that Lena offers because you are committing a ton to the board to get Arabella to trigger like in maximum damage.
Right. Lena has a sack herself, and then creatures with power less than hers get indestructible till end of turn. So that seems pretty good in deck with a lot of little things, and you will succumb very easily to a board wipe.
Yeah, so the 3 mana token generation I think are perfect. You play Arabella on 2, you play Hordling Outburst, Hop Tuit, even call the Copper Coats or something like that on turn 3. We'll make you a couple of bodies and get the damage train going. You're going to put a lot of pressure on your opponents quickly, so you want to make sure you're always on the front foot.
Yeah, and Song of Totentans.
This card's sweet. It makes a ton of bodies.
Yeah, it does suck that the rats you create cannot block, but you're going to be in a position where when people are attacking you, it may be
gains so much life.
Yeah,
already.
You'll be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to try and race people. This is the Boros deck, everybody.
We've been having a lot of sets that have this like little guys theme, like when powers 2 or less matters.
Something happens,
So I wanted to make sure we have that kind of support in the deck. You want to make sure you have your vegetables, your card draw, and just any sort of valued engines you can create. Delny Streetwise Lookout is going to make all of them work twice as well.
Yeah, this card, unfortunately, has gone quite up in price, and it seems to be one of those cards that when it gets reprinted, you're going to want to get your hands on it, because it is just If an ability of a creature you control power 2 or less triggers, it triggers an additional time. That's going to be a lot of stuff happening in this deck.
We're going to be talking about it a lot today, actually. There's a few times where Delny's just really, really powerful. And in a deck like this, where your whole creature suite is intended to be little, it's basically a Panharmonicon for every single kind of trigger you have.
Yeah, it turns out we all need a Streetwise Lookout in our lives.
Plus, it's evasion for Arabella.
Yeah, so a new card in this set is very similar to Welcoming Vampire because you're going to need to draw some cards in Boros. It's Enduring Innocence, which is basically enduring a Welcoming Vampire, but when it dies, it comes back as an enchantment.
Right.
Hooray.
It's like a Welcoming Vampire that turns into a Takesia's Welcome, kind of.
Yeah.
Obviously, slightly different.
Very hard to get rid of 2 things instead of just one. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get a constant draw engine from having these kinds of cards out, which is very powerful for this deck.
I really like Subira in this deck. I used to have a Subira list, but I never quite got it to work. But this one says another target creature you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Ooh. Perfect for getting Arabella through. And then it says 1 in a red, tap, discard your hand. Until end of turn, whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less deals combat damage to a player, draw a card.
Yeah.
You're going super wide. You can get a guaranteed one thing through. Discarding your hand is a heavy cost, but if it means that you draw 4 or 5 cards, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, and you're ideally doing it when you're already pretty low. Mm-hmm. There's cards in your hand you don't care about. You have 7 creatures on the battlefield, and your opponent has 3 blockers. You're like, fine, I'll make 2 of them unblockable. I'll lose a few, but I'm going to draw a bunch as a result. Mm-hmm. And then ideally, those cards help you get the cards back. Imperial Recruiter, as well as Recruiter of the Guard, seem like the perfect tutors for this deck because it's always about power or toughness 2 or less, right? Mm-hmm. So those are going to be great for, again, giving you just a small amount of advantage. That's what Boros decks always run into. We saw it with Josh's deck in the Assassin's Creed episode. Yeah. Just when you lose the ability to keep putting your foot on the gas is when you just lose. Yeah. So you need to have forms of card advantage that sometimes come at a disadvantage, which is Subira, and Imperial Recruiter, which is not. It's like you're trading a card for a card, so it's not a draw, but you're getting selection. Yeah, you probably pull a Welcoming Vampire or something off of it to get more card draw. No, I'm going for the Enduring Innocence.
There you go, get the sheep. The other way that you can sort of eke out advantage when your creatures are naturally smaller is one-sided board wipes. There's a lot that are really, really powerful that'll maintain your whole board and blow up a lot of the big stuff. Mm-hmm. So Battle of Bywater is a really powerful one. Yeah. You destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater, then create a food token for each creature you control.
More life gain.
Pretty good. Get a bunch of tokens. Elspeth's Son's Champion makes 1/1s for you and blows up anything with 3 power or greater.
That's great.
That 2-for-1 combination is exactly what you want in your cards. It's a great late game. It's a great engine. Mm-hmm. It does everything for you. One more thing I wanted to talk about as a cool finisher in this deck is stuff like Mob Rule.
Oh, yeah.
Where it steals all the little guys. So it's choose 1, gain control of all creatures with power 4 or greater, or gain control of all creatures with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap those creatures. They gain haste until end of turn.
Grab the little guys. So you might grab a bunch of other 2-power creatures.
Yeah. And then you attack with Arabella. You do way more damage than you had planned to, and you have more damage. It's sort of a surprise.
Yeah. Mob Rule, I haven't seen a win to Mob Rule in a long time.
Mm-hmm. I like this 2-for-1. You can attack with all those creatures, and you get the damage triggers are even more powerful with Arabella on the board.
Yeah. And if you're someone like me, you have a bunch of tokens, you're putting some kind of altar in there to sack them all and get a bunch of mana. And then you can also cast cards like Storm of Souls, which brings all your creatures back from your graveyard. Not so great with the Hordling Outburst, but they all come back as 1/1 spirits that have flying. Mm-hmm. So that's also pretty sweet. You're going to get in a lot of chip damage that way.
If you do get hit with a board wipe, this deck is pretty wrecked. So having something that just reanimates everything and rebuilds your board in a second is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, white is pretty good at that in general. It's got a lot of effects for that. And then you also have Dawn's Truce, Teferi's Protection. You've got a lot of those protection spells that exist for you as well.
Finally, we mentioned haste. It's going to be really, really important with your commander. Anytime your commander has an attack trigger, you want a lot of ways for this creature to be able to attack as soon as it comes down. Lava Spur Boots, Lightning Greaves, the new Arena of Glory is a land that taps to give a creature cast with it haste. Even Murph's favorite card is going to be pretty good in this deck. It's Break Through the Line.
Oh, this is the deck for Break Through the Line.
It's a perfect Break Through the Line deck.
Yeah, 1 red enchantment, pay red, target creature, power 2 or less, gains haste, and can't be blocked. It's perfect.
That's exactly what you want in this commander, and you're not going to get it blown up in a board wipe.
Yeah, haste is very important. Lava Spur Boots, I've grown to like more and more and more. Ward 1 sometimes is as good as Hexproof, turns out.
Yeah, if it's inconvenient, commander players don't like to do it.
Yeah.
That's Arabella. She's got some really cool stuff. That's going to be a fast commander. You rebuild really fast, and you have to be ready to be the aggressor.
Yeah.
As you always do in Boros.
You now have a lot of options in Boros. There's all the equipment decks that have come out. Now you also have the card that is Abra's Mirror. I forget the name of that one that Josh played in Assassin's Creed. But there's also like ping damage and just small bits of damage. So Boros is still all about killing your opponents quickly. This is definitely a deck that I think, too, can be a very easy budget deck.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you're looking, and I just built a Boros equipment deck, and I was surprised. I was like, wow, I'm playing a lot of cards in here that just are not expensive at all, and I can build this any different way. So I think if you're looking to just smack something together quickly, and you want one of those like, hey, I'm gonna try and play a fast game type decks, is really great to have something like this in the back pocket.
Pretty fun.
Yeah, next up is one that I'm quite excited about. It's Kona Rescue Beastie.
The Bay love the Beasties.
Oh, we went from A to K. There's not too many B's, C's, or D's up in here. Kona Rescue Beastie is a 3 and a green for a 4/3 Beast Survivor. I'm a survivor. This thing looks, by the way, terrifying. It's got
I love
all the
these
masks.
beasties. The mask thing is part of Duskmourn lore. It's like if they show their face, then they're like super scary.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep their face hidden.
It's got similar vibes to Happy Mask Salesman from Zelda, and also there's this like awful creature in Avatar: The Last Airbender that's in the Shadow Realms or whatever that always is shifting its face. The face stealer, Ugh.
But this one's a good dog.
Yeah, it's a good beast survivor. It has an ability that's called Survival. It says, at the beginning of your second main phase, if Kona Rescue Beastie is tapped, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield.
Yuck.
Whoa. So Survival is, I think it's the green-white mechanic in Duskmourn.
Yeah.
And it wants creatures to be tapped. Obviously, combat is the easiest way to tap them, but also the easiest way to lose them. And these are beast survivors. So how do we tap this thing down?
Put them in a car and drive them away.
Fly them away. Kona Rescue Beastie, we're rescuing you in a smuggler's copter.
Yeah, I really like ways that can tap Kona that you can cast before Kona hits the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
So Smuggler's Copter is obviously a very powerful vehicle, but it comes down before Kona. So you can cast Smuggler's Copter, cast Kona, crew it right away, and then cheat something into play the turn that you cast your commander.
Yeah.
Which is really, really what you want to do. You don't want to have to untap with Kona to get value out of it.
You're not trying to give Kona haste. You're not trying to have her swing the turn that comes down. You just want it to get tapped. So yeah, crewing is the way to do that. You can do so with creatures that do not have haste, that are still summoning sick, no prob bob.
Yeah, I mean, Smuggler's Copter is great, so you can do any number of vehicles that are cheaper than 4. I also like including some saddle creatures. Ornery Tumblewag is a really good way to get Kona's power up, so it is safe to attack, but it's also a great way just to tap down Kona the turn that she comes in.
Yep, saddle. And then we also have a lot of mana creators that are able to tap creatures down. So you've seen this before with a Jespera Sentinel, which is just a reach 1/2 elf, and it can tap and untap creature control to add 1 mana of any color. So you're actually using Kona up before it was crewing it. Now you're using it to add more mana. Great. You can cast a Springleaf Drum with that mana, which does the same thing. Tap and untap creature control, add a mana.
Survivor's Encampment, Relic of Legends. There's a few ways to turn your commander into mana right away.
Paradise
All
Mantle,
of these work while it still has summoning sickness. That's the important thing here. Like, I think you probably could put in like all creatures you control have tap, add mana.
Sure.
But it doesn't really help Kona tap the turn it comes down. So I really liked ways that can force the tap instead of ways that wait until Kona can do it herself.
Yeah, and everyone's going to see a tapped Kona, and there is a period of time before it gets to your second main phase where they definitely can react. So protecting Kona is also very important.
Yeah, she's scary. She represents any number of terrible things in your hand, right?
Yeah.
Any commander that lets your opponents imagine the worst thing
It becomes the worst.
is going to be really scary.
Yeah.
Even if you're like, I'm cheating a land into play. It's a land.
No one cares because it could also be a Vorinclex.
Yeah.
The bad one.
So protection is going to be a really big deal here. I liked Inara Wolvid Familiar because she's also a beastie.
Oh, cute.
And it says as long as it's your turn, commanders you control have indestructible.
Yeah.
It's also a permanent that you can cheat into play with Kona. When I'm building a deck like this, I like a ton of synergy where it's like, I want basically everything to be able to be cheated into play.
Yeah.
So permanents are really best, or something that like draws cards and protects or just does double duty in the deck is the most important thing.
There's a lot of non-creature spells that also help protect your Kona. Smuggler's Surprise is a card that I keep finding myself looking at and going, I should put this in more decks.
I think this card's cracked.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, so it's got Spree, and it's from Outlaw Thunder Junction, so you can add more mana to it to have it do more things. But the one that we're talking about here is green and 1 to give your creatures with power 4 or greater, hexproof, and indestructible till end of turn. So we already know how good 1 in the green is in green to stop everything, right? We have the, whatever, I forget the name. Heroic Intervention, yeah. But this also has the ability for 6 mana, 4 in the green and the green. Put up to 2 creature cards from your hand on the battlefield, which is exactly what the deck wants to do.
Perfect.
And then sometimes you'll go green and 2, mill 4, put up to 2 creature and or land cards from among the mill cards into your hand, which is also great. Every single thing on this card works very well in this deck.
It's good when you're behind, it's good when you're ahead, and it's good to like explode you into the lead. I think Smuggler's Surprise is really good in decks like this.
And sometimes you do all of them.
I think this card has been largely outpaced, but I like it in this deck because it's a big, scary permanent. It's asceticism. So this says creatures you control can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. This creatures you control of hexproof, and then you can regenerate target creature for 1 and a green.
Yeah. Regenerating taps them down, by the way.
It does. So there's a lot that asceticism does for you. It taps Kona if it would die. It protects her in combat. It gives her hexproof the rest of the time, and it's just great value to cheat into play off of Kona.
I feel like you want to cheat asceticism in every time because paying 5 for it and then not having the ability to use the ability is kind of annoying.
Yeah, largely this card is felt outpaced in Commander, but here I think it does a lot of work for you.
Yeah. Good job.
Finally, of course, Lightning Greaves. Just anything you can do to protect your scary commander is going to go a long way.
Yay.
The final category we want to talk about with Kona is what to cheat into play.
Yeah, so it puts a permanent into play, which is really powerful. So outside of just being a land, we're talking enchantments, artifacts, creatures, battles are a permanent.
Sure.
Sagas, planeswalkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a fun one because this is where the deck becomes your deck. And you get to decide how scary the Rescue Beastie is actually going to be.
Yeah, I think this, like, anytime we talk about what we're cheating into play, this is largely flavored to taste, right? You can do really expensive top end, like Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, like these crazy Eldrazi type things.
Yeah, you don't care about casting them because you just want to have an indestructible Annihilator, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you just get a ton of value if you can cheat something that expensive into play on the first go. My favorite thing is Galta Stampede Tyrant.
Oh, it just does it all.
This is new Galta. And when it enters the battlefield, you put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So if you can get Galta into play off of Kona, you can also get all of the other creatures in your hand
at the same time. Yeah, very powerful. You do have to have a hand that's full, though, notably. You don't want to play out your hand and have nothing in there except for a Jaspera Sentinel. It's like, cool, here comes the big scary Kona cheat out with Galta and an elf. 1/1, yeah.
It said all the creatures.
All the creatures,
so I get value.
Obviously, Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, is one that I would love to do. I built, the new Zimone flips permanents up so they don't get loyalty counters if they're planeswalkers. But because you're putting them onto the battlefield from your hand, they will enter with everything.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, pretty
Zendikar
sweet.
Resurgent is a mana doubler and a card draw engine, so if Kona does get blown up, at least you have mana doubling to cheat even more things into play,
yeah,
plus
another
the card
card
draw to keep going.
This is another card that kind of got outpaced, right?
Yeah.
Like great henge type stuff. This is kind of the deck, too, where you get to live those dreams, which is why I like you can just do permanent stuff on the battlefield. Because it's like, cool, I want to play Zendikar Resurgent again. I can.
You can, because it's free.
You can also do Nyx Bloom Ancient if you want to be that kind of person.
Yeah, Nyx Bloom Ancient, Avenger of Zendikar, anything that gets you excited to play Commander, you should cheat into play off of this dog.
Yeah.
One I liked was Chimil, the Inner Sun.
Oh, yeah.
This is the one that on your end step discovers 5. So you cheat one big thing into play, but you continue to cheat even more things into play one turn after another.
Yeah. If you're on Scryfall, just look up cards that are, let's say, 7 mana value and up in green and colorless. You can click the low commander one to choose green, and you'll just see all the options. So you're looking for stuff with fun ETB effects. I would also recommend Greater Good in this deck if you're playing big creatures, because you got to keep that hand full.
Yeah. Some cool stuff you can do with Kona. Kona is very powerful and is in a monocolor, which I always think is fun to brew. If you haven't built monocolor, it's a cool restriction. And
all I'm doing these days, by the way.
I love it. The mana bases are cheaper. You feel more creative. Like, your commanders are less played.
Yeah.
And you're not just like, I need 3 more fetch lands. And I gotta.
It all started when I built my Beza deck. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to build more monocolor decks.
So fun.
Yeah, it's
You
really
should
fun.
do it. It's a cool challenge.
Okay, and you get to use the sleeve that is the color of the deck, and you don't feel it's like all white, all green, all blue.
Very crisp.
Okay. I care about that kind of thing. You may not. All right, let's move on to the next.
Perfect with your Mana 8 product.
Yeah, no, they're not. They're the Vivid binders, but they're all color-coded, but it's not Mana 8.
The next commander we're going to talk about today is Niko, Light of Hope. 2 white-blue for a legendary human wizard. They're a 3/4. When Niko enters, you make 2 shard tokens. If you don't remember shards, that's okay. They were only on one other Niko.
This must be a new thing for the set, right?
They're enchantments with 2 sacrifice this enchantment, scry 1, then draw a card. So they're sort of clue enchantments.
Yeah, better clues.
Then has an activated ability that says 2 tap, exile target non-legendary creature you control. Shards you control become copies until the end of the next end step. So they become copies of the exiled creature.
Cool.
Then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step.
Niko themselves creates shards when they enter, and then you can tap Niko after you've cast them, by the way, and they don't have something sickness. Find a cool non-legendary that has some sort of blink ability or enter the battlefield ability, and all of your shards become that thing.
This is very interesting to me because I feel like every time, like the first time I looked at Niko, I was like, okay, they're a blink commander.
Yeah.
Because they have a blink ability on them. But then there's also this thing that turns the 2 shards into the blinked creature. So you sort of want creatures with ETB abilities that work off of the...
They're non-legendary.
That are non-legendary. And they also have some sort of value when they sit on the battlefield. Like a Muldrifter, you can blink and you draw 2 cards when it comes back, but the 2/2 flyers that the 2 shards become is like fine.
Yeah, that's cool. It is nice that you, at least you have your shards don't need to be tapped. Now they can become attackers in battle or whatever.
There's some very cool things you can do too, because the shards have been on the battlefield already, so those can tap right now. They can attack right now. You give whatever you're blinking basically pseudo haste, and you have 2 of them. I do think this is a very tricky build. This took me a while to figure out what the balance is, what Niko actually wants to be doing. And
do you go more towards the first ability, or is that just secondary to really the big blink one?
Yeah, is it just a blink commander? Is it another Azorius like regular blink commander? And luckily, Josh did a ton of brewing with Niko because he played them on game nights.
Wow.
So, a little spoiler. So a lot of what we're talking about is kind of based on Josh's build, but also on stuff that I found while we were looking. And this first category we're going to talk about is ETB creatures, is the ones that give you the generic blink value. But I wanted to look at ETB creatures that also had attack triggers or damage triggers or some sort of value on the board.
Yeah. So this is great because white-blue has infinite numbers. You just look at any white-blue blink deck and you've got every single... So now we're looking for cards that kind of fit into that secondary category.
Yeah, it narrows it down a little bit. Yeah. Cards like Aerial Extortionist are cracked.
You love this card, by the way.
I love this card. I talk about it all the time. When Aerial Extortionist enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owners may cast it. Then, whenever a player casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card.
Now, this finally feels like it's got the best home in Niko.
This is perfect.
Yeah,
because you play the Aerial Extortionist, exile a thing, then you exile it with Niko, get 2 shards of it.
When they hit someone as a 4/3 flyer, exile 2 more things.
Then Aerial Extortionist comes back,
exile another thing.
And of course, that's 7 mana, and you have to have your commander in play, but that's like such a powerful turn.
Yeah. Let's not kid around. Niko is 4 mana, and then their ability is 2 mana to activate. This is a deck that gets blown out if they remove the commander.
Yeah.
So you just have to come into this game knowing it requires a lot of mana for me to do this thing, so we can dream a little bigger here.
Yeah.
We're not looking to be uber, 2 mana competitive. We're just saying, hey, here's the cool stuff you can do. You're going to have mana and some protection up to do it.
For sure. Seasoned Dungeoneer is a really cool option. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative.
Oh, hooray.
And then, whenever you attack, target attacking cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard. It's a warrior. And also wizard is your commander. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that.
Gains protection from creatures until end of turn. It explores.
So That's so much value.
Some explore triggers. You get some damage triggers. And then you get 2 initiative triggers the turn that you cast it, because you cast it.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Guardian Scale Lord. I love this card. it backs up. So it comes in, puts a 1/1 counter on something, and then gains the ability that the Guardian Scale Lord has. Whenever this creature attacks, return target non-land permanent with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is this creature's power. So pretty good to turn your shards into this. And just when it comes down, it puts a 1/1 counter, you get the ability immediately. It comes back, does it again. So you're just growing your board, making things tougher and scarier, and just probably bringing back that Mold Drifter, I think.
Yeah. I mean, something that Josh mentioned with this deck is the stuff that you're blinking should have just a reasonable, useful body.
Yeah.
Like, it has flying, it has some sort of combat damage trigger, it has a good static ability. You really want some value off of those shards. To the point where Josh was like, honestly, I wanted... In my opening hand, the thing I was looking for most was a way to blink Niko to make more shards. Because the more shards you have, the more value you get out of a creature becoming a copy of it.
Right.
So Josh included a bunch of ETB creatures, but also a lot of ways just to blink Niko and all those ETB creatures as well.
Yeah.
Ephemerate's a classic. Eerie Interlude will blink a ton of things, or just Thassa Deep Dwelling or Soul Herder that blinks them on the end step.
Yeah, there's, again... a whole plethora of cards that do this. Teleportation Circle, Conjurer's Closet. You can kind of go nuts on the ones that are in your collection and the ones that you think are the most flavorful.
Soul Herder is great because you can blink it, get 2 Soul Herders, and blink more things on your end
that's
step.
right. Because the shards stay around and they'll get the end step triggers. That's actually interesting too. You could look for cards that have end step triggers that your shards can turn into as well. You're going to get some value off of that.
There's a lot of different ways that you can build this deck. I was even looking at like Restoration Angels or like Salvation Swans.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're 3/4s with ETB that blink things, and then they're great to copy because they're just huge.
Yeah.
So you can get some 6 damage in the air, and you don't care if your shards are tapped, they can't defend you anyway. So.
Yeah. And they both have flash and are flyers, so that's just a great, gotcha as well out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that.
So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of a Niko list. That's the value engine. But we wanted to talk about how the deck really goes over the top and wins the game. And that's by using all those shard tokens you're making and turning them into something terrifying.
Yep.
Obviously, you can go as big and crazy as something like a Blightsteel Colossus.
Okay, yeah, so you make even just 2 shard copies of Blightsteel Colossus will definitely be enough to kill someone.
Kill
at least one person.
At least one person.
Maybe 2.
You can do something, that's a big splashy play that pairs very well with stuff like Ethereum Sculptor or like Palladium Mirror was even what Josh was talking about.
Yeah.
If you do this with value creatures and suddenly you have 4 Ethereum Sculptors and all of your artifacts cost 4 less, that's a very powerful play. Now casting a Blightsteel doesn't seem that crazy.
Yeah, or you tap your 4 Palladium Mirrors to add 8 mana.
And you're like, okay, I paid 2 mana to make 8 mana. Now this is starting to look like a Josh Lee Kwai deck.
Yeah, right. And you're casting X is equal to 6, making a ton of stuff or whatever it is. Yeah, at that point, it's kind of like exponential is what's happening, right?
Right. The Archon of Sun's Grace is a really fun one as well. You can exile your Archon, make 4 copies of Archon, blink your Niko, get 2 shards tokens, which makes you 8
Pegasi, 2 2s. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
So looking at things that start to scale when you have more copies that get more and more and more powerful is really how I think this deck goes over the top.
Yeah.
Stuff like Curiosity Crafter has an exponential value for you.
Yes. Whenever creature token you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And so each of them, if you have 6 tokens, they all deal combat damage.
They all see each other.
6 times 6?
You draw 36 cards.
Yikes.
Yep.
Now you're playing a Josh Lee Kwai deck.
Hey. There's a couple of things that do this that are like whenever it or another deal combat damage, they scale. Curiosity Crafter is a very good one. There's one that says whenever like an artifact creature deals combat damage, that kind of thing. One that I liked was Angel of Destiny.
Oh, gosh.
This is not a card I play very often, but it is gross.
You have to explain this many times to opponents before they understand what's happening. Yeah.
3 white for a 2/6 Angel Cleric with flying and double strike. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. At the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, each player Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game.
Yeah, so you're going to have, let's say, 4 of them.
Let's say 4.
They all swing, and you're going to gain a bunch of life.
Because they all see each other.
And you can also swing with other creatures, and it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage, you just gain that much life. And as long as you have 55 life, everyone could lose the game that turn. except for you.
And
right?
they all trigger each other, so it's like minimum.
Oh, that's right. They all see each other and they
because it doesn't give them lifelink. It's a triggered ability that says whenever a creature you control deals combat to a player, you and that player each gain that much life.
So if you have 4 out and this hits for 2, you'll gain 8 life.
I mean, this hits for 2, you'll gain 8 life, and then it hits again, and you gain 8 more
on each player that's hitting. Oh my gosh!
But that's for 1 Angel of Destiny. You have 4 Angels of Destiny.
Oh my gosh!
Right?
So they have double strike. I forgot. Yeah. So 4 for each.
So 4 times. So it's 16 damage. 16 times 4. You gain that much life. That's a lot.
That's ridiculous.
It's kind of gross.
You will definitely murder everyone. The double strike on it, it's brutal.
Yeah, I think it's cool.
Get ready to do math.
Niko is wild, and you can kind of go in any direction. Josh went more artifacty value-y, and you can still draw a ton of cards. You can go more blink and like angel-y. There's a lot of different ways that Niko can get built, and all of them are quite powerful as long as you untap with your commander.
Once again, open up those binders. Find the cards that work best and go nuts.
Oh, the other thing he mentioned was Myriad.
Oh, Myriad, yeah. So you can Josh, play the selves on it as well, but just create with Myriad.
Yeah, if you like copy an angel, Battle Angels of Tier or something like that, then you have 4 of those and they all have Myriad and you hit. It's just things can get out of control pretty fast. Okay.
Finally, attack triggers are good.
Up next is Rendmaw, Creaking Nest.
This is the secondary commander in the Winter Precon. Mm-hmm. It's a 3 black and a green for a 5/5 legendary artifact creature Scarecrow.
Nice.
Menace and Reach. Whenever Rendmaw enters and whenever you play a card with 2 or more card types, each player creates a tap 2/2 black bird creature token with flying, and those tokens are goaded for the rest of the game.
What?
So Rendmaw itself is a 2 card type creature. It's an artifact creature. Mm-hmm. But so Rendmaw or any card that has 2 or more card types. So we're talking artifact creatures, we're talking enchantment creatures, we're talking things that have 2 things.
I wanted to clarify, it says whenever you play a card with 2 or more types, so this triggers on lands, this also triggers on artifact creatures, but you do have to cast them because the play implies that you are putting it into play formally.
Oh,
you can't
I see.
Like if you have a thing that allows you to search your library for an artifact land and put it into play, that isn't played, that is put. So it wouldn't trigger Rendmaw.
But lands are played.
Yes.
So lands are really the reason why this says play outside of just cast, right?
Yeah. It just means that like if you crack a fetch and somehow that's an artifact creature, it wouldn't hit on the second one.
Yeah.
That's not playing a land, that's a land entering the battlefield. And the same with creatures. You have to cast them. You can't like reanimate all your scarecrows from the graveyard and trigger Rendmaw a whole bunch of times.
Right.
Finally, I wanted to talk about before we get into the cards, I want to talk about how this plays out because this is very interesting. The birds enter tapped.
Yep.
So when you play Rendmaw, everybody gets a bird. Yours is tapped, the next player's is tapped, theirs will untap, they'll attack, and the other players hypothetically don't have any. They have a tap 2/2, so they can't block it. And they all must attack. So unless there's something weird going on where somebody has like their creatures have vigilance or something.
Yeah.
The skies are going to be clear for these birds basically all the time.
Yeah, or if there's just a bunch of flowers out, then it's different.
Yes.
Yeah, because they all come down, they're all tapped. I untap, I swing. Now mine's tapped. You untap, you swing. Now yours is tapped. And that keeps it going like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like dominoes almost.
It is also worth noting that yours are also goaded.
Yeah.
The goading effect stays in play whether Rendmaw is there or he dies.
Yeah, lifetime goaded. It's like it's printed on the text.
Yes. So those are some of the quick rules explanations for Rendmaw. That being said, there's some really cool stuff you can do with this card. The first category, of course, is things with multiple types. This is pretty easy for you to find, so we're not going to spend too much time going through these. I did want to mention that card types is like creature or artifact, not like Hydra or equipment or legendary or snow.
They're subtypes.
They're either subtypes or super types and aren't counted in the card type category. Basically, this is anything that a Tarmogoyf cares about.
Yeah, you're looking mostly for the things with before the dash. Now, Rendmaw is legendary artifact creature. The legendary is a super type, I believe. Yeah, so you ignore that. So artifact and creature. And again, the types are artifact, creature, enchantment, battle, planeswalker, right?
Kindred,
yeah.
I think there's 9 total. There are a ton of different combinations that you could all include. We have found a Scryfall syntax that is going to search for all of the things in green and black. We put a link to that Scryfall search in the show notes, but we're going to run through some of the highlights right now.
Yep. The most common are going to be artifact creatures, and then followed by enchantment creatures. So artifact creatures, we have the Ornithopter of Paradise, which is a mana dork. Coppermere, it's a mana dork. Ornithopter just comes down as a free 0/2 that gives everyone a 2/2. Kind of funny.
Love that. Phyrexian Walker, Memnite are all 0 mana artifact creatures that trigger your commander. Seem pretty busted here.
Roaming Throne also happens to be an artifact creature. Now will double up the trigger, so now you're making tons of 2/2s for everyone, including yourself.
Pretty gross. I think I would lean more artifact creature-y, but if you want to go the enchantment creature route, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Courser of Crufix are both great value options that you could throw into even a more artifact build.
And then you have Grist, the Hunger Tide, which is a planeswalker creature. Because as long as Grist isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types.
That includes on the stack.
Yeah. So as you play it, it does have 2 or more types. It's a planeswalker creature, and then it enters and becomes a planeswalker.
And then, of course, lands are going to be the next easiest way to trigger that. You want your Vault of Whispers or Dark Moss Bridge. Artifact lands, there are enchantment lands like Urza's Saga or the new Valgavoth Slayer.
Which is basically the House of Horror, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's got to, unless he's got a specific layer that's separate from but he made the house.
Yeah. Now, Dryad Arbor finally finds a home.
Nice.
Hooray.
And I did want to mention some Kindred cards because this is a great way to get 2 types on your non-creature stuff. So like Bitter Blossom is a Kindred enchantment.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Nameless Inversion is a Kindred instant, and that's a removal spell.
Eyeblight's Ending is a Kindred instant for Elf. Yeah, in the past, these were tribal instants, and if you look it up, you'll see that they've been eroded. So that's, again, check out the Scryfall syntax in this post. It'll show all of them, because it is getting a little tough sometimes to remember which cards are birds, and what, you know what I mean? Like, oh, and this is now all of a sudden a whatever, Berserker. It's like, I don't know.
This next thing I wanted to talk about, I want to take a second to talk about type altering effects because it does seem like it's going to be really, really good in this deck, but there's some weird caveats.
Okay.
So like Mycosynth Lattice is a thing that says all permanents are artifacts in addition to their other types. All cards that aren't on the battlefield, spells, and permanents are colorless. Players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. So the weird thing about Mycosynth Lattice is it doesn't affect anything on the stack. It only affects permanents on the battlefield.
Interesting.
So Mycosynth Lattice will turn all of your lands into artifacts. So all of your lands will trigger your commander, but it won't turn all of your creatures into artifacts. So your creatures, if they're just a regular creature and not an artifact creature, won't trigger your commander.
When you cast it, it is not. But the lands do see that.
Because when you play them, they're on the battlefield.
Right. There's no moment where, because the lands don't use the stack.
Yeah.
Wow, that is...
Isn't that bizarre?
That is very bizarre,
So, like, you could include Mycosynth Lattice if you just wanted to...
Make all your lands.
Turn all your lands into artifacts, but you can only really play one land or multiple lands if you have additional land drops a turn. So it's not very good.
And Life and Limb is another card you put on here, and it says all forests and all saplings are 1/1 green sapling creatures and forest lands in addition to their other types. So this will only affect your lands.
This would also only affect your forests. Yes.
Okay.
Not your creatures, even though they would technically be like your sapling creatures would technically be a land once they hit the battlefield.
Gotcha.
They're not on the stack. Biotransference only affects your creatures, but does work how you want it to.
Right, because it says that creatures you control are artifacts in addition to their other types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield, kind of like Grist.
Yeah, so biotransference would turn all of your creatures into artifact creatures. But by that point, I feel like you just want to play artifact creatures.
Instead of playing this random enchantment.
Yeah. Like Egret, Eater of All, only turns your creatures on the battlefield into food tokens, so that doesn't help.
Right.
Ashaya is the same way. It doesn't affect the type on the stack.
Yeah, it feels like you don't want to get so cute with this deck. Your commander is already the first piece to set up in the combo. Now you're adding a second piece before the third one works. Just skip it, just put in the creatures that have 2 types already, or find ways to replay them or get them right, or have them do their thing more often instead of having to play a biotransference. And then from there, hopefully, and you built in now a ton of creatures in your deck that aren't 2 types.
Yeah, it just gets really messy. And it's stuff like Mycosynth Lattice doesn't even make all your stuff work.
And they're all expensive too, notably. It's 4 mana, 5 mana, 6 mana,
So, probably worth skipping the type altering effects. But The next category we're going to talk about is ways to take advantage of the birds.
That's right. A bunch of 2/2s entering the battlefield. They hopefully can start murdering your opponents. Before they do you, because they have to.
Because they're crows.
They're crows.
A murder of crows.
A murder of crows.
Primal Vigor is sweet. It doubles your tokens, but also all the tokens your opponents make. So now, every time you cast your commander, you make twice as many birds.
Yeah, that's twice as many of those tokens. So those tokens are goaded, I believe. That's attached to their their existence. Reap you put into here. I thought that was pretty interesting. It's 1 in the green instant. Return any number of target cards from your graveyard to your hand. You cannot choose more cards than the number of black permanents target opponent controls. Well,
where'd they get all those black permanents?
Wow, because Reap normally is like, I hope there's someone in play that has a bunch of stuff, but now you can Reap whatever.
Pretty sweet.
Nice. And replay those 2 type creatures or whatever you're playing.
One of my favorite playstyles with this kind of thing is give your opponents a ton of creatures and then punish them for having so many creatures.
Aha.
Like Bloodseeker. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you may have that player lose 1 life.
May ability.
Izuri's Predation gives them a ton of birds, then fights all their birds and gives you the beasts.
That's you are in black, so board wipes aren't a difficult thing to have, but Izuri's Predation is always hard to find a place for it. It seems really good in this set. Oh, Wingstorm. Haven't seen this card in forever. Deals X damage to each player, where X is twice that number of creatures with flying that player controls. So it will hurt yourself, notably.
But hypothetically, your opponents have been attacking each other.
Yeah,
their life totals are lower than yours. That's the goal of the deck.
Yeah.
So hopefully Wingstorm will kill your opponents and not you.
Yeah. Calculating Lich. Whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents, that player loses 1 life. Ugh, this is one of those things where you're like, that can't kill me. And then you realize, oh no, I am going to die.
Yeah, it's going to chip away at your life total here. Species Specialist enters the battlefield. Choose a creature type bird. Whenever a creature of the chosen type dies, you may draw a card.
Yes. Excellent.
Love that.
At some point, someone's going to play a 4/4 flyer and being like, I am no longer getting hit by these birds.
I am murderer of birds.
Now your species specialist is very happy to be there.
I even like including Gix Yawgmoth Braider.
Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may pay 1 life if they do draw a card.
I mean, it puts a ton of pressure on their life total and obviously gives them a lot of cards, but I think that goes along with the spirit of the deck.
Right.
That's like incentivizes your opponents to attack each other, gives them a little bit of payoff, and hopefully, keeps some of that ire elsewhere.
Okay, so we got to talk about infinity at some point here. There are ways to get infinite birds, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a scrap trawler loop.
But once that happens and you pass the turn, doesn't every player in succession eliminate each other until it gets to you, and then you get eliminated because you don't have flyers?
No, because you go first. So you go, before you get attacked, right?
Right.
So if you give the player to your left infinite birds, they have to attack with infinite birds. Let's say they don't want to do what you want, and they only eliminate 1 player.
Okay.
So their turn is done, their birds are goaded, they have fulfilled their duty.
Right.
The remaining player, all their birds are still goaded because there's 2 opponents. They take out this opponent.
Right.
And now you untap next, and you also have infinite birds and can eliminate the final player.
So in the best case scenario, you pass the turn, that player has infinite birds, they kill everyone but you because they can't.
Yeah.
Then you get to untap and kill.
Yes.
I see.
Worst case scenario, they only kill 1 of their opponents, but it still works out for you.
Yeah, by the time it gets back to you, there should be a 1-on-1, and you get to untap first.
Yes.
Okay.
Unless they have some way to give their birds vigilance, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah, or the intruder alarm or something.
Yeah, or they had to take an extra turn. There's a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of using a scrap trawler loop. So you use like scrap trawler, Cork Clan Ironworks, and like a junk diver and a soul ring. You can just loop them, and then you cast the junk diver over and over and over and over and over again, which creates infinite birds. You can also, drain their life out with a Bloodseeker or something like that. So that's the Scarecrow deck. I think this one's really fun.
Yeah, this one's definitely fun. It's one of those cards where I feel like, and in certain play groups, will be extremely oppressive, and in other ones won't do as much as you want because they'll just have board wipes or whatever else it is to get rid of the thing that's happening, and then you're too slow to catch back up. But in some groups where people just aren't prepared to deal with flyers, see you later, alligator.
It's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, it's going to be a bird problem.
Up next, we've got the Jolly Balloon Man.
Yes, this is creepy. What is he blowing up as his balloons? Those aren't...
They're balloons.
Those are...
Balloons.
Those are the heads of politicians from Duskmourn. All right, Jolly Balloon Man.
Oh God, I don't want to think about the politics of Duskmourn.
I mean, kind of. This guy in the front looks like he, has eaten too much at the bereft, whatever, at the sake of
the food court.
Yeah, at the food court, yeah, the rich people food court that no one else is allowed in. That's made of like severed heads, children. I don't know. They're eating weird stuff. They're sucking blood. It's Duskmourn. They've got to be evil some way. All right, 1 red and a white for a 1/4 legendary creature, human clown. Also wearing a mask, I noticed. Has haste. You can pay 1 and tap it. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, except it's a 1/1 red balloon creature type, in addition to its other colors and types, and has flying and haste.
Sweet.
Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is a commander that lets you copy your own creatures and gives them haste.
And turns them into balloon versions of themselves.
Yeah, flyers too. So you can hurt real bad.
This card's sweet. Because it has haste, I don't think I would cast this commander until I had something to copy and the 4 mana to cast and activate my commander. So I wouldn't just run this out on 3 and then untap, and then you're not getting the full value. So I would play a 3-drop that you want to copy and then cast the Jolly Balloon Man and copy it the next turn.
Yep. Yeah, so the easiest one to think of is Spirited Companion.
Yeah, I think this is a nice innocuous way to set up your engine at the beginning of the game. Draw some extra cards, get a balloon, peck in for some damage, get a combat damage trigger, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You could even start including like the Salvation Swan or the Restoration Angel that we mentioned before. You make a copy, blink something else. You get a little bit of extra blink value off of your single copy from the Jolly Balloon Man.
Yeah, that seems like what I'd really want to do. Spirited Companion's already there, but I'd rather blink or get a copy of an ETB, Salvation Swan, the Resto Angel, all that good stuff.
A very cool thing that you can copy is a Johnny Nicodle Pariah.
But it's a legendary. Why would you want to copy it?
Oh, because you care about cats dying, Jimmy Wong.
And a Johnny is a cat.
So when he enters, you make a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token, and whenever one or more other cats you control die, you may exile a Johnny and then return him to the battlefield under his owner's control as a planeswalker.
Yeah.
So you play in a Johnny, you make a cat friend, you copy the Johnny, you make a second cat friend, you sacrifice the balloon copy of a Johnny. Original Johnny was like, my balloon popped, and turns into...
Wow, that balloon looked just like me.
It was really... I'm going to have to work through this with my therapist.
It's Planeswalker time.
Into a Johnny Nicodle Avenger.
Here's how I deal with this.
A Johnny has a 0 mana ability that says make a 2/1 cat warrior token. When you do, if you control at least 1 red permanent other than a Johnny, which is the Jolly Balloon Man, of course, then you deal damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target.
Wow.
Well, now you have minimally the Jolly Balloon Man, 2 tokens that the Johnny's made, and the one you just made off of the Planeswalker. So you can deal 4 damage to any target.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And you have a Planeswalker in play.
Yeah. A Johnny is sometimes tough to flip, but in this case, you're doing it yourself, which I love. Now, we got to talk about some new Campana cards.
Obviously.
This is the first one I think we talked about this set, though, right?
I think so.
Wow,
and
took
this
a while.
Is a really, really big balloon. Actually, no. Isn't Aerial Extortionist a new component card?
You're right. It
totally is.
Yeah.
Boss's Chauffeur enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to 1 plus the number of other creatures you control. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1 counter on Boss's Chauffeur, and when it dies, create a 1/1 white and green citizen creature token for each +1/+1 counter on it.
So this is going to go nuts.
Yeah.
Basically.
It sure is.
You're going to create a Boss's Chauffeur. It's going to enter, let's say, with 2 1/1 counters. You're going to create a copy of it, and then it's going to create 4 1/1 counters or whatever.
On the balloon,
and then put 1 on the original Boss's Chauffeur. That balloon will die, and then it's going to make 3 1/1s. Yeah.
Also, you get you make a balloon copy of the Boss's Chauffeur.
Yeah.
Which is totally gross.
Totally gross.
Anything that comes in with a little bit of a power boost is going to be really powerful in this deck. Your balloons are base 1/1, but if it's like a 3-fold Thunderhulk that enters with counters,
you
get the ETB, make more mirrors, you get to attack with it right away, make more gnomes,
Gnomes, sorry, yeah.
And then the balloon pops and you're like, oh, that's okay. I still have my original and a million gnomes.
I was wondering when we would talk about a card that was from Jurassic Park, and here we are. This won't be the first one, by the way. I think we were talking about a little egg later on. This is Swooping Pteranodon. Pteranodon?
Pteranodon?
Pteranodon. Udon. 3 a red and a white for a 3/3 flying haste. When it or another dino with flying enters the battlefield under your control, which will be a balloon version of it. This is like the most terrifying theme park ever.
I know.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
There's balloon dinosaurs, and they're alive.
So whenever swooping or another dinosaur with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you gain control of target creature and opponent controls. Until end of turn, you untap it. It gains flying and haste. At the beginning of your next end step, target land, it deals 3 damage to that creature. Never seen that text before in my life. That part isn't so exciting if the creature can't die to it. If it can, great. But this lets you steal 2 things the turn it comes down, if you have extra mana to use a Balloon Man.
And deal 3 damage to 1 creature twice.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, you guys steal something. And there are also cards in this deck called alters, probably, when you have cards that
to that creature. So you deal 3 and 3.
3 and 3, yeah.
So the idea is you play the Pteranodon, you steal something with 3 toughness, ideally. You copy it.
Steal another thing.
Steal another thing when it ETBs, but also the original sees it. So you steal 2 things.
Yeah.
So at this point, you've stolen 3 things and can kill 3 things.
Yeah, the idea kind of is that there are a lot of swooping Pteranodons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they get even more scary.
And they love some tourists.
They scale very well.
Yeah.
So that's a very cool one that scales with copies. Baylor is sort of the same way.
Ooh.
Because the balloons have haste and because the balloons get sacrificed at the end of turn, it's very good with attacks and dies triggers. So whenever Baylor attacks or dies, perfect, choose 1 or more. Each mode must target a different player. You can either have target opponent draw 3 cards and then discard 3 at random, target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact, or it deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand.
You can do all of them.
Yeah, the balloon has haste and then gets sacrificed. You get to go through this twice.
Yeah.
And that's, you still have your original Baylor.
Baylor is very fitting, very scary. Okay, so now we have some fun stuff to do with the balloons. Now, how do we make this even more powerful? We talked about Delny earlier. Delny's coming back. That is for sure.
Yeah, Delny's great because the balloons are wee.
Yeah.
Populating the balloons is really nice. So nesting Dovehawk, you can even make a copy of a nesting Dovehawk and then populate the nesting Dovehawks with your 2 nesting Dove, and then you just have all these bird balloons.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Determined iteration is at the beginning of combat on your turn. Populate the token created this way. Gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end steps. You just get even more balloon value.
More Pteranodons, more 3-fold Thunderhulks, yeah. Mondrak Glory Dominus will also double everything you're making here. We obviously have a lot of... This is going to be a recurring theme, I think, over time. We're going to see more and more ways for white to double tokens.
Yeah, there's a lot of different Mondrak type effects that you can use. Finally, just untap effects like Magerite Stone is 1 tap, untap target creature that has an ability with a tap on it.
Yeah, notably, Balloon Man is sorcery speed only, so stuff like Sting the Glinting Dagger will not work because it untaps in combat.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it first main phase, second main phase, but untapping each time, really, it doesn't give you any more additional value than Magerite Stone. Really.
Yeah, I think you want to get the attack triggers in with this.
Agree.
Again, you're red-white, so that is going to be a big part of your plan is killing people that way.
And we're all surprised. There's combo potential with a creature that taps to make copies. It's Kiki Jiki at home, basically. So you can copy like a Zealous Conscripts, untap your Balloon Man, sacrifice the Balloon Zealous Conscripts to something like an Ashnod's Altar, and use that to
get mana,
make another Balloon.
Zealous. Yeah. Hooray!
All you need is a payoff, something like an Impact Tremors, and you've done it.
Yep. Zealous notably untaps, which is why it's so powerful, and you can target your own stuff.
Yeah. It's a little bit worse because of the sorcery speed stuff. It's not as powerful as Kiki Jiki, but you're pretty close.
Yeah, you're pretty close, and also you don't want to be as powerful as Kiki Jiki because you won't be able to do anything with the 2/2 that everyone can kill and wants to kill. So hopefully the Jolly Balloon Man will be sort of sitting in that area that's just below, but still equally powerful. And again, you don't have to put in an infinite combo in the deck if you don't want to. You can just be making weird, gross balloons.
That's my plan.
I mean, the art on this card is
foul.
Really foul, yeah.
Really something.
That's why I want everyone that the Balloon Man is making balloons of to be bad, awful people. That way you don't feel so bad that their heads are getting inflated and floating over you and popping and then raining down all sorts of awful things. Truly a house of horror. What
got
room?
Even more horrors to come.
Hold on. What room is the Balloon Man in?
I don't know.
Because you need a lot of... Look at the room in the art. He needs a lot of space.
A lot of space for all these balloons.
Balloons are going up. So hopefully you're going to be able to avoid this.
He's in the gymnasium?
Yeah. Stay away from the gymnasium.
You don't go in there.
Yeah, you might think it's a good place to hide. No, that's where the balloon man's hanging out. Gross. All right.
Even more horrors to come after a few words from our sponsors.
They're back.
Dark Lord of Insects, I call you! Altanak! 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 Sorry, dude, you've gotta stop calling me. You know how expensive my freaking phone plan is?
Master, you should really switch to Mint Mobile. Right now, all of their 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan.
No, that sounds hard.
No, Master, it's easy. You can even keep your old number, your phone, and all your contacts. Why, it's easier than getting 3 copies of a card into the graveyard to cheat on your mana cost.
Well, you can just pay my full cost.
No, I'd rather pay only $15 for high-speed data on the nation's largest 5G network. Mint Mobile, Mint Mobile, Mint Mobile!
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/command. That's mintmobile.com/command. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/command. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower, above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Hey, Josh, what you brewing?
A health deck.
Don't you mean life gain?
Nope. I'm trying to eat healthier, but I'm a better deck brewer than I'm a meal planner, so health deck.
Well, you could start by cutting this Korean barbecue card.
What? No way. God, this is tough. It's hard to cut the things I like, but the healthy stuff is expensive. It just totally throws off my curve.
Well, if you want some easy and inexpensive tech, check out ORGAIN. I've been loving their new 30-gram protein shakes as a way to get more nutrition. They help me manage my hunger and maintain a more healthy lifestyle. Even if you're not a bodybuilder, protein is still key to a healthy diet. And ORGAIN shakes actually taste really good without a ton of sugar or artificial sweeteners.
Whoa, that is good. Nice. Easy upgrade.
Wait, this isn't food, this is Ristic Study. Why is this in here?
For card draw? Duh.
ORGAIN 30-gram protein shakes are available at Costco and Orgain.com. If you want to get in on the delicious protein-packed nutrition today, head to Orgain.com/command and use code COMMAND for 20% off your order. Once again, that's ORGAIN.com/command for 20% off. And make sure you use our promo code COMMAND so they know we sent you.
And then I'm going to flash out Illusory Ambusher. I will bolt it to draw 3 cards. I will sneak attack out Triskaidekaphile. I'm going to go to my upkeep, and I will win the game.
That was your first time playing the deck?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first time in paper. I've already goldfished it like 100 times on ARCHIDEKT. Their playtester is super user-friendly. Playing cards just takes 1 click, and you can mulligan, tutor, and move through your turns with the press of a key. There are simple menus with counters and copies, and you can take notes on cards as you play them.
ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome to a brand new episode of Game Nights. I'm your host, the Lord of Pain.
Yeah, we're talking about the Lord of Pain from the new Duskmourn House of Horrors. This also appears on Game Nights.
Yeah, and is Game Nights going to be out by the time this episode's out? No, right?
I don't think so.
The Lord of Pain, you will be
Spoiler.
seeing, more spoilers. You're going to see the Lord of Pain on Game Nights. You're also going to see it in some other cool content that we might have coming out. So get ready. The Lord of Pain is here to bring you... not pain, I guess in this case, entertainment.
The Lord of Entertainment.
The Lord of Entertainment. Well, Josh is upstairs. Hold on, we can't. This does get played on Game Nights. It is 3 black and a red for a 5/5 human assassin, even though he's buried inside the TV. It's got menace. Your opponents can't gain life. And whenever a player casts their first spell each turn, choose another target player. The Lord of Pain deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to the chosen player. So the Lord of Pain is never going to choose yourself.
Nice.
If you are the Lord of Pain, you are just dealing damage out to everyone.
Which is appropriate, because the art is him pointing.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like, pain to you, pain to you.
You better hope you're not the Miss Bumbleflower deck, because every time you cast a spell, it's going to deal damage on other players' turns, because it's first spell each turn.
Each turn.
Yeah.
So, instant speed decks, beware. The Lord of Pain has your number.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this is there's not a ton to of really tight synergies with this, right? You just want to cast
the Lord of Pain.
You just want to cast spells and big ones, kind of.
Yeah, or just other ways that punish people so that life totals go down quickly.
Yeah, so you could really put anything inside the Lord of Pain. As long as it's dealing damage, he loves it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, give me more of that.
More pain!
One drop? Fine. Little pain, but still pain. He's the Lord of Pain.
Fine.
He doesn't discriminate. All levels of pain are okay for this guy.
A little pain. So the first category is just ways that sort of tax your opponent's life totals.
Yeah.
And I really like cards like Protection Racket here, where it's at the beginning of your upkeep, repeat the following process for each opponent in turn order. Reveal the top card of your library. That player may pay life equal to that card's mana value. If they do, exile that card. Otherwise, put it into your hand.
So you could draw up to 3 extra cards.
Yes.
At the beginning of your upkeep.
Yes. Or they could pay life.
Yeah. At a certain point, when they're at like 15, 12,
You start drawing some real cards.
you start really drawing some cards. Yeah, especially those 6 drops. 6 drops. Six drops.
The major downside with Protection Racket is you can't draw lands off of this because it's very easy for
They'll
them
just
to pay zero.
instantly exile it. Yeah.
But this kind of thing just starts putting pressure on your opponent's life total, and if they don't, they give you more value to do more pain.
It's a 3 drop too, right?
Yeah, I like this card a lot.
Yeah, I also like cards like this where early in the game everyone goes, yeah, sure, I'll pay the life, no problem. And they take 3, 4, 5, and they realize very quickly on that, oh, just like in Limited sometimes where you're like, I missed 1 point of damage, could it actually matter? The answer is yes. And it matters a big time amount when it gets to turn 5, 6, 7, when the Lord of Pain's out and you've now really taken a ton.
Yeah, he's the Lord of Pain. There's more pain coming.
Yeah, and you really wish you didn't give that first card, but you didn't know because you were at 40 and everyone's like, oh, and Commander, life total is so easy to use, no big deal.
Protection Racket's interesting. I played in Rakdos.
Yeah.
Somebody paid 13 life so I couldn't get the Emrakul that was revealed.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, I'll cast this Emrakul for my hand. Like, you can't. Now my creatures cost 13 less to cast. You understand?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
I think the mentality I would love for players to learn from this, I want to teach people, is that if that 13 drop is the best card in your deck and you're so excited to play it, and then they decide to pay the 13 life for it, the card got reprinted in your deck to just say deal 13 to an opponent.
Which is sick. For free.
For free, yeah. And so, yeah, you don't get to play this game, but you've got another 80 cards in your deck, right? So don't go into the mode where it's like, oh no, I lost my big things. Like, no, the card just has new text.
Just dealt 13 damage.
Yeah,
That rules.
at an exile or whatever.
More life taxing is Vile Smasher the Fierce, of course. It's sort of a similar thing to the Lord of Pain, but it's just for you.
And random, yeah. But you're just trying to deal damage out indiscriminately regardless.
New card from Bloomborough is the Hearthborn Battler. 2 in a red for a Lizard Warlock with haste. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Hearthborn Battler deals 2 damage to target opponent.
Oh, you get to choose.
You get to choose.
Oh, okay.
So if somebody's being pesky, you can send all 8 damage that way. Second spell is not that much to ask for in this type of deck.
Yeah. Wound Reflection seems very powerful here. At the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. And again, you can really point that at the person that when it doubles, it's going to hurt them the most because you're the Lord of the Pain.
I wanted to mention that the major problem that you're going to run into with Lord of Pain is people are going to cast their signets first. They're going to cast a Soul Ring. They're going to cast something small so damage doesn't get thrown around. So I was thinking that maybe something you can do in the deck is make it more difficult to cast spells. So you want you be more efficient with them. You don't want to cast the cheap spells.
Yeah, you got to do the big thing.
A Painful Quandary says whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card.
Oh, man.
Now you're not casting those signets because you're not willing to pay that cost.
Yeah.
Obviously, these kind of cards are going to put a ton of pressure on your opponents, and they're not going to enjoy having a Painful Quandary on the board. But I'll tell you what, you're the Lord of Pain. You're already putting them in that position.
They should have known when they sat down and they said, what commander are you playing? You went, the Lord of Pain. You're like, oh, I'm looking forward to a nice game where it's like I'm sitting in a sauna. And
you're like, why did you play Painful Quandary? I'm the Lord of Pain.
Why did you play Oppression? I'm the Lord of Pain, which is Painful Quandary, but cheaper. And whenever a player plays a spell, they just discard a card from their hand. So at that point, it's like, do I run out my Signet, Soul Ring, whatever? It's like, no, you're going to discard 3 cards. You just play the thing you need because you're now getting taxed in your hand as well.
So now you have to cast your big spells first, which means more pain for the Lord.
More pain for the Lord.
Spell Shock is another way to do this. Whenever any player successfully casts a spell, Spell Shock deals 2 damage to them.
Yeah, pretty good. Eidolon of the Great Revel, an oldie but a goodie. Whenever a player casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, it deals 2 damage to that player. So now all of your signets really hurt.
You're like, don't cast those little things.
I like Eidolon a lot because this comes down early and just people are like, whatever, and then it very quickly becomes, oh no, that has really killed me this game.
Spoiler alert, you're the big bad. So you're going to need ways to defend your life total because yours is going to be notably higher than everyone else's.
And you're the Lord of Pain. Everyone's really not going to enjoy what you're doing to them.
So pack some goad. Defend yourself with Kardur the Doomscourge.
Kardur's great.
He's great. He's always good.
There's also like cards that goad our opponents or creatures and all that stuff. Karazakar, the Eye Tyrant, very similar effect. Very powerful. Very
Yeah.
good.
That kind of stuff is just encourages more pain for the pain gods.
Okay, now that we can throw around a ton of pain, how do we make that first spell that we cast high enough mana value that it really hurts / potentially just kill someone?
You pack your deck full of ridiculously inflated life totals like Shadow of Mortality.
On the stack is a 15 mana value card, but it says if your life total is less than your starting life total, it costs X less to cast, where X is the difference. So there's a good chance you're going to be down in your 20s at some point. This just costs black, deal 15 damage.
Gross.
About time someone played Shadow Mortality in the deck.
Volcanic Salvo does a similar thing. It's a 12 drop on the stack, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control.
Could be red.
Volcanic Salvo deals 6 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. So it's a removal spell in the late game once you have some of your bigger threats on the battlefield.
Yeah, and even if it's just, I can't kill anything with this, but I can still deal 12 damage to someone, that is very good.
Yeah, 12 to face, kill 2 things, that's pretty busted.
Yeah, even 12 to face, kill no things, is what I'm saying.
I mean, it's 6 damage. You got to be able to kill some stuff.
Yeah, what if they're all spell slingers?
You're right.
Yeah.
They won't have any creatures.
In which case, the Lord of the Pain is just having a blast. Fevered Suspicion. This is 6 black and red with Rebound. The Rebound, I believe, does see the mana value when you cast it again, yeah?
It's 8 mana, but it says each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library and they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among them without paying its mana cost. This is an Itali trigger.
Yeah.
You spend 8 mana, you get an Itali trigger right now. So you tap out, you get 4 spells, maybe
It's
random
better than
spells.
Natali because you skip the lands.
Yeah, for sure. Exiles card. It's each opponent, so you get 3 spells.
Until they exile non-land. Yeah,
You do your 8 damage to your opponent with the Lord of Pain out, or maybe he's gone because people don't like him. Sad. But then it rebounds and it does it again. You don't pay any additional mana. It deals 8 damage again if you have the Lord of Pain back. There's a lot of value packed into this sorcery, and I know we're a little skittish about expensive spells, but this is a lot of value.
Is it Karazakar on this?
It is, yeah.
It looks like it.
It is.
From the
He's
thing
waggling
side.
his tongue around.
Yeah, come. I'm suspicious.
Blood-Soaked Insight is great in this deck.
Yeah, so this costs 1 less to cast for each 1 life your opponent has lost this turn. This could, again, just be black, or red, or red, black. And then you get to exile the top 3 cards of an opponent's library, and then till the end of your next turn, you can play those cards. If you cast a spell this way, mana of any type can be spent to cast it. That part not so impactful, because you might just hit nothing. But again, just a 7 mana card that also serves as a black-red land in your deck. So it's just a free card, basically, to put in. You are 100% okay swapping a land out for a Blood-Soaked Insight.
Perfect.
Go,
that's,
MDFC.
The Lord of Pain's favorite insight.
Yeah. Is Blood-Soaked?
Yeah. Less about the insight, more about the blood. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the more narrow tech for this deck. It's hard to build a lot around it, but there's some cards that work really well with it. Like Magda the Horde Master says whenever you commit a crime, make a tapped treasure token, and you can sack treasures to make scorpion dragons. Anytime you choose an opponent, crime. That's a crime.
That is a crime.
Lord of Pain loves crimes.
Crime doesn't pain. At knife point, I found this one what is the Lord of Pain, by the way? It is a
assassin.
He
sure is an outlaw.
Perfect. He is an outlaw as a good Lord of Pain. So whenever as long as your turn outlaws you control first strike, so great for Lord of Pain just to swing in. Whenever you commit a crime, create a 1/1 red mercenary, and then it activates once a turn.
Little bit of a defense. Just having incidental 1/1s to jump block with, I think, is a big deal.
Yeah, that's cool.
Guff Rewrites History is a really sweet spell.
Oh, yeah.
This is 2 in a red for an instant. For each player, choose target non-enchantment, non-land permanent that player controls. Those permanents' owners shuffle them into their library. Each player who controlled one of those permanents exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card and puts the rest on the bottom. Blah, blah, blah. Each player may cast the non-land cards they exiled without paying its mana cost.
Oh, snap. That's 3 players all casting their first spell that turn.
Yeah, I mean, you cast Guff, and then all of your opponents cast one, too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I love how it has to say non-enchantment because it's red.
Yeah. No, you can't touch enchantments.
Yeah.
But if you hit each of your opponents, you get 3 cast triggers. Pretty sweet.
Yeah, I also like that you included a demonstrate card in here. So creative technique. When you cast it, you can copy it with the demonstrate ability, and then the opponent gets to cast it, and you get a copy as well, which is great because you get to basically get that free cast trigger off someone else as the first turn, right?
I don't think there's casts. You may copy if you do chose opponent to also copy
they copy it? Darn.
They're not cast triggers. But
Fine.
creative technique...
The card is sweet, though.
The creative technique works basically like Guff Rewrites History.
Yeah.
It allows them to cast a spell on your
gotcha.
turn.
Okay.
Because it's sorcery speed. So you get 2 free spells off of it, but then you sort of force, it's May cast, but you give an opponent an opportunity to cast a spell on your turn.
Okay, I'm down for that.
Yeah. Finally, Deflecting Swat, Bolt Bend. These are both 3 and 4 mana instants that you can use to protect your commander, who everyone hates, and also deal some damage on an opponent's turn.
Yeah, this is not the most popular commander, just guaranteed. We've already talked about a few, right? Like the very first one, Arabella, is going to be very unpopular.
A lot of damage.
Lord of the Pain is also right along those same lines. So,
it's just going to elicit response from the table.
Yeah, just get ready if you're playing a Lord of the Pain deck. It will create that vibe where everyone goes, no, we need to kill you now.
But it also makes for a very fast game.
Yeah, I'm down for Lord of the Pain shenanigans. Anytime someone brings a card like this to the table, I'm very happy to just see how it plays out. It's similar to me to like Descent from Avernus.
Yeah.
Right? It speeds things up, gets things interesting. Sometimes the deck that really...
Descent to Avernus, also very good in Lord of Pain.
Yeah, very, very good. The decks that are like, oh, once I get my engine going and have everything in place, then it's unstoppable. I take a 20-minute turn. Lord of the Pain, make sure those games don't happen.
Yeah, it's like you won't get to that turn.
Yeah.
You're taking a bunch of damage.
Yeah, you've taken a bunch of damage, and sorry, you're too slow, Joe.
All right, so we've met the Lord of Pain. It's time to meet the Master of Keys.
Oh. Much less painful.
This, too, is a backup commander from one of the precons. This is from the Aminatu precon. Master of Keys is X white blue black, so Esper for a 3/3 flying horror. It's a legendary enchantment creature. When Master of Keys enters, put X +1/+1 counters on it and mill twice X cards. Each enchantment card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard.
Okay.
Ooh, Esper Graveyard Enchantress.
Yeah, this is a new archetype, right? We haven't really seen this before.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we saw Abzan Graveyard Enchantress with Nykthea.
Nykthea.
We got there.
Yeah. So, interestingly, you can just cast this for white, blue, black.
Yep.
You don't need to put anything into the X because you're probably going to have ways to mill in this deck anyway.
For sure.
But later on, you have more mana. You want to pay 3 into X, cast a 6-mana commander, get 6 cards into your graveyard. The rate's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I can see actually casting it for like 5, milling 4 the first time you cast it, and then later in the game when you just want your commander on the board, you just pay 5.
Yeah.
Now you have the commander tax with it.
Yeah, you'll have milled a bunch. And I would say do not build this deck without mill already in it.
Yeah, let's start there. With one of my favorite cards of the year, it's Ripples of Undeath.
Yeah.
2 mana enchantment at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase. Mill 3 cards. Then you pay 1 and 3 life. If you do, put a card from among those cards into your hand.
Yeah, so this is 2 mana every turn, mill 3.
Yeah.
It's really good. Stitcher Supplier we talk about all the time because it can do it twice. This, if you get it out early, is just going to be one of the best mill engines in your deck, flat out.
Plus, it's an enchantment.
It is an enchantment. That's right.
Chronic Flooding is also a 2-mana aura. It will enchant a land. Whenever enchanted land becomes tapped, its controller puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Woo! You don't even have to pay. You just put it on the land, and when you tap the land, you mill.
You're milling a bunch. We got Out of the Tombs, which is a Warhammer card. 2 in the black. At the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Eon counters on this card. Then mill cards equal to the number of Eon counters on it. So, late game, not so great. Early game, this thing might mill you out if you're not careful.
I mean, it has a plan for that.
If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, instead, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If you can't, you lose the game.
Careful.
Yeah. Definitely Out of the Tombs.
Yeah. So it's good for your enchantment creatures and just value creatures, getting all of that stuff out. But in the meantime, it's a huge mill engine.
Yeah, good chance you're probably not going to get to the second part of it. But if you play this early enough, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, it's a big time mill engine.
I wanted to mention Vessel of Paramnesia. I'm not sure it's quite efficient enough, but it's close. It's 1 and a blue for an enchantment that says blue, sack Vessel of Paramnesia. Target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, draw a card.
So I think this is playable because of the next category that we have for Master of Keys.
What I like about, it's a sacrifice enchantment. So it's a really great thing to cast from your graveyard with escape and then pop it, mill 3 more cards, draw another card. Gives you a ton of card selection and it really fuels that graveyard repeatedly.
Yeah, or it can be the thing that you escape with. You used to exile. It just has to be, it is another thing in your graveyard and it does replace itself notably.
Yeah, getting that draw is a big deal as well. So
Yeah.
let's talk about some enchantments that go to your graveyard naturally that you can use over and over again.
Yeah, because you do want to do that. You're in Esper, so you have a lot of choices here. Seal of Cleansing is 1 in the white. You sack it to blow an artifact or enchantment up. Can't say enough how late game if you just have the ability to replay something like this on a whim, because sometimes people will just tutor for artifact or enchantment removal. So having this in the graveyard and having it repeatable is pretty great.
Seal of Removal, Seal of Doom, both remove creatures and can be recurred from the graveyard, no problem. The funniest option is definitely Standstill.
Yeah, where'd you get this one from?
AD plays it.
It's great.
Whenever a player plays a spell, sacrifice Standstill. If you do, each of that player's opponents draw 3 cards.
Hey, that includes yourself.
So this is a 1 and a blue for an enchantment you put on the battlefield, and then you pass. And you wait until one of your opponents decides they can't wait anymore, and you all draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you have a huge flying beater that you can just start doing damage with.
Right.
Like, Standstill basically says somebody has to break.
Still. Yeah, someone has to break.
And it shouldn't be you. I don't know how much to express to you that you should not be the one to trigger the Standstill. Giving your opponents 9 cards is too many.
Yeah, I'm okay though if one person doesn't get it and I get it. That's totally good for me. Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that you can loop it with this deck is ridiculous.
Yeah,
You
every
play
turn
the
Standstill.
Cast all your stuff, and then play the Standstill again.
Yeah.
It's like, gosh.
That's hilarious. Another card that sacks itself is Mystic Remora.
Sure do.
Oftentimes you play this early and you're like, you know what, don't need it anymore. And then later on in the game, if you can recast this very easily for just 1 mana, seems pretty great because you might, again, get, instead of, let's say, 3 cards off it, now you're looking at maybe 5, 6, or whatever, and you don't have to worry also to, by that time, the cumulative upkeep isn't going to hurt you as much.
Yeah.
Right? Mystic Remora is great early game, but I would say by turn 3, if you're paying the cumulative upkeep, then you're starting to fall behind.
Yeah, for sure. Dress Down sacrifices itself. It's a really funny thing to be able to loop. When it enters, draw a card.
Yeah.
Creatures lose all abilities. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Dress Down. So the fact that you could play this every turn, as long as you're fueling your graveyard well enough, means that you're not going to lose to creatures.
Ever.
Nope.
Well, you still might. Hey, what about sagas? They kind of sacrifice themselves too.
They go to the graveyard, absolutely.
Yeah.
I pulled a couple of them that just mill you.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I really want my sagas, is fueling the graveyard and giving you incidental value until maybe you cast them again.
Yeah. This is great, though. Ballad of the Black Flag. Mm-hmm. Assassin's Creed. We made it. We're touching all the universes today. One Blue has 4 chapters. The first 3 is mill 3, and you can put a historic card from among them into your hand.
Sure.
So this reads, at its base, let's say it only does it 1 time, 3 mana, mill 3, draw 1. That by itself isn't the worst.
Yeah.
The fact that it gets to do with a bunch and the milling is directly helping out your commander because every time you mill 3 cards, that's 1 more enchantment that you can escape out. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Well, actually, mill 3, return 1, so it's like 2 out of the 3 cards you need.
This is fairly efficient for a 3 mana enchantment that is fueling your primary plan.
Yeah.
Timurit, Calls the Dead is roughly the same, 2 and a black. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then you may exile a creature or enchantment and you make a 2/2. You probably don't do the 2/2s unless you really need the defense.
Yeah.
And then finally, you gain X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. Sure. But mostly, this is going to be a mill engine that you can keep recurring from the graveyard.
Yeah.
Finally, auras often end up in the graveyard. That's where what happens when there are board wipes and removal spells. So playing stuff like Animate Dead or Necromancy.
Oh, yeah. Necromancy is really sweet,
You
actually.
can replay from the graveyard and get creatures back from your graveyard or other people's graveyard. That's a really, really powerful thing to have access to all the time.
Yep.
As is Darksteel Mutation.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Now, the creature itself gets indestructible, but getting a Darksteel Mutation off eventually, they breathe a sigh of relief, and you get to do it again.
And play it again.
Not so fun for that player. Whoever's getting mutated, it's probably your commander.
Finally, we wanted to talk about some stuff that works from with all the graveyard synergies that you have going on. Secrets of the Dead is a really cool one. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card.
Oh, there you go.
You got to have a lot of mill going on, but it's a cool enchantment to have.
Yeah, Lord of the Forsaken. I haven't seen this card ever played, actually.
I know. And it's sick here.
Yeah, Flying Trample. You can pay a black, sack a creature, target player mills 3 cards.
Sure.
Be you. Or pay 1 life and add a colorless mana. Spend this mana only to cast a spell from your graveyard. So this is great. 1 life for 1 mana, and everything in your graveyard can now get cast for pretty cheap outside of the colored pips. That's great.
Very cool. It's also a great thing to throw your Animate Dead or your Necromancies on.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Even Dorothea, Vengeful Victim is pretty cool. This is 2 mana 4/4 flying. When it attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at the end of combat.
Oh no!
But it has Disturb, so you can cast it from the back. It says enchanted creature has, when this creature attacks, make a 4/4 white spirit creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice that token at the beginning of its next end step. If it be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So the exile is a bit of a bummer here, but the fact that this is a huge blocker, which is great on a low creature
white blue
type of deck.
4/4.
And they're like, well, I'm going to have to sacrifice her anytime she blocks. It was like, yeah, but they're not going to send their 3/3 into a 4/4.
Right.
So she's not going to have to
just sit there for a long, long time. Yeah.
It's a great rattlesnake in a deck like this, and then it gives you a little bit of a win con to start pushing some damage through in the air on the ends.
Very powerful. All right. Next up, we have a mono blue card. It's gotten a lot of attention online. It's the Mindskinner.
Sure is.
Blue, blue, legendary enchantment creature, nightmare, can't be blocked. It's a 10/1. I don't think we've ever seen a 10/1 before.
10/1 unblockable for 3?
Mana. However, if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage, and each opponent mills that many cards. So the 10/1 will not do damage, but it will make each opponent mill 10.
Interesting. Okay, so instead of getting again, this has the mill problem.
Right.
You're going from 40 to 0 to going from 100 to 0.
0, yeah. But any source that would deal damage to an opponent that you control, you get a mill. So it's not just the Mindskinner, which is kind of cool.
You could storm off with an Aetherflux Reservoir and then pay 50 life and have all your opponents mill half their deck.
Okay, half their deck instead of just killing them with the Aetherflux Reservoir.
Yeah, it's good.
It's so good.
I think it's good. Mindskinner is hilarious, and I want to talk about it because I definitely sort of picture this as a Voltron-style deck, right?
But for mill.
But for mill, exactly. So you're starting with a great base. This is a 10/1, so any equipment you can put onto it that doesn't have a combat damage trigger, of course, because he doesn't deal combat damage, is going to be really cool here. So Trepanation Blade says whenever equipped creature attacks, defending player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card.
Ooh.
Then the creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each card revealed this way.
Ooh.
That player puts the revealed cards into their graveyard.
So this could be like a 15/1 out of nowhere.
And it mills them for 5 cards when you attack anyway. So it buffs your commander that mills them, and it mills on the way.
Yeah, Fire Shrieker has a card that gives double strike, so it's going to smack twice. Again, this creature can't be blocked, so that's 20 cards now off everyone's library.
The Nuke Launcher. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and has Intimidate. Whenever equipped creature attacks until the end of defending player's next turn, that player gets 2 rad counters whenever they cast a spell.
Yep.
So they'll mill on their next upkeep.
With the rad
It's a bit of a slow engine, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Strength Testing Hammer, 1 mana, 3 equip equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks, roll a 6-sided die that gets +X/+O, where X is the result. Then if it has the greatest power or is tied for the greatest power among creatures on the battlefield, draw a card.
Nice.
You're probably going to draw a card.
A little bit of buff, a little bit of card draw. If you really want to go over the top, a great one in the late game is Bone Horde. This gives the equipped creature +X/+X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards.
Yeah, it's
hypothetically, you've been milling. This is an enormous buff. Plus, it comes with a creature attached.
Bone Horde plus Fire Shrieker is sweet too, because double strike damage will hit first, mill a bunch, and make it even bigger. Hit again, mill even harder next time. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, there's a lot in this world. Assault Suit's pretty funny. +2/+2. Has haste, can attack you or planeswalkers. And guess what? At the beginning of each player's upkeep, you're going to give your Mindskinner to someone else. And it's got to attack.
So it prevents all the damage they would do.
Yeah.
And mills the player for that many.
Oh, right. They can't do damage anymore.
No.
They have the Mindskinner. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're passing the Mindskinner around. Now everybody's dealing mill damage.
They can't sack it. It has to attack.
It's not goated, so it doesn't have to attack. But their other creatures don't deal combat damage. They could send those at you and mill you, hypothetically. But you're milling the most, and now you're not taking damage.
Yeah.
So Assault Suit really cracked me up. It feels like a great way to throw a wrench into a game. The other way to mill a lot is just to put a bunch of power onto the board. Stuff like
I love that.
Jace's Phantasm is a 1 mana 1/1 illusion that gets +4/+4 as long as an opponent has 10 or more cards in their graveyard.
Oh, that's going to happen.
10 cards? We've got a way to put exactly 10 cards in a graveyard.
Hit them one time.
So now you have a 1 mana 5/5 that mills them for 5? Seems sick.
Yeah, Mirelurk Queen. I played this card in the Fallout episode. It enters the battlefield, the player gets 2 red counters, and then whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, you draw a card, then you put a 1/1 counter on the queen. So that's great. You just got to keep the engine going. Draw some more stuff, mill everyone with red counters. Pretty sweet.
Vantress Gargoyle is a 2-mana 5/4 that can't attack or block unless defending player can't attack unless defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. These sort of cheap, evasive beaters are just going to mill a lot of cards really fast and defend your life total.
It's a 5 for a flyer. It's going to hit.
Yeah, for sure.
And it randomly can tap to make people mill, but you're not going to be doing that, really.
So having these like big creatures that do that is fine, but you're going to need some other mill support in the deck. Because 10 every turn it's still like
you're
an
not going to win.
Clock. Like that is really a lot of times to attack with your commander.
And this will definitely make people upset at you even more than like
people hate mill. People hate it.
They hate it.
It's silly. It's not very good, but they do not like it.
Yeah. Unless they're a graveyard deck, in which case they giggle.
Yeah, and then they just win.
Yep. I've had that happen to me.
If you want to speed up the clock a little bit, you've got to put Bruvak the Grandiloquent in. He just caught a reprint, so hopefully that price is down a little bit.
Yeah, they made this for mill decks. If someone's going to mill, they mill twice that many instead. So Bruvak, and it's only 3 mana, which is great.
There you go. That's like milling 20 cards every time you attack. Now we've got Ulamog numbers on the board.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing I was thinking about is clones. So they don't scale exponentially because the Mindskinners, like, the first one will replace the damage, and then there's no more damage to replace. So you're still only going to mill 10 per Mindskinner. But if you have something like a nanogene conversion that says choose target creature you control, each other creature becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn, except it isn't legendary. Now all your creatures are 10/1 unblockable that mill all of your opponents.
Yep.
And all their creatures are also Mindskinners, but that's not very good for them because they can't block anyway.
Yeah, it's just more about the fact that you have multiple things. Same with like a Spark Double that creates a copy that isn't legendary. So it's not about exponentially. You just have 2 10/1s that will mill them for 20 instead of 10, right?
Altar of Dementia goes very well with 10/1.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. Nanogene Conversion, Altar of Dementia feels like you should win the game.
That feels awesome.
Right. You make a bunch of 10/1s, hit everyone, make them all mill 80, and then you do it again by sacking
80 should be enough. They've drawn cards at some point.
Yeah, and then you have the Altar of Dementia, take out anything else that's potentially remaining, and it's game over.
Classic combine Maddening Cacophony with your Bruvak. It's sort of an infinite mill combo that makes everybody mill their whole deck.
Yeah, pretty good.
Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I think the biggest lesson to take from Tasha's Hideous Laughter, which exiles the cards instead of putting them into the graveyard, is that if you're playing mono blue but mill, you need to pack Graveyard Hate.
Yes, this is really important because I've lost a lot of games with mill decks where just one player goes, oh, this is the literal best thing that could happen to me.
Right.
Now I'm going to combo off, storm off, and your mill plan was cute, but it just made me surge ahead from everyone else really quickly.
Definitely pack a Scavenger Grounds is going to be a huge deal. Canoptic Scarab Swarm is actually
love this card.
Cool.
Yeah, I put this into my the winter upgrade.
Yeah.
But enters the battlefield, you exile a graveyard, and for each artifact or land exile this way, you make a 1/1 insect token with flying.
Huge.
Instant board, and it's a 4 mana, just wipe out a graveyard, potentially get you an army that could win the game with just that. Well, if your commander's out, you're trying to still mill, but it's still very powerful.
And even having incidental Graveyard Hate, like with Dino DNA that can pick off one scary creature a turn, or Agatha's Soul Cauldron that does it at instant speed, plus Agatha's Soul Cauldron buffs your commander, which mills even more cards.
I'm down with that.
I included one more section on the Mindskinner, and this is the silly things to do to your opponents. The first one is Exchange of Words.
Yep.
This says, when Exchange of Words, it's a blue enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose 2 target creatures. For as long as Exchange of Words remains on the battlefield, exchange the text boxes of those creatures.
So you're giving another creature the text box of the Mindskinner. You're not actually exchanging the creature itself.
Right.
But there are ways to do that, by the way, in Commander in Blue.
Yeah. So you keep your 10/1 with whatever their best creature's ability is. They do steal their Nyx Bloom Ancient or something. You make their Nyx Bloom Ancient a Mindskinner, and now their creatures can't deal any damage.
And you get a Nyx Bloom Ancient.
Until they figure out how to get rid of either Exchange of Words or their own creature.
Yeah.
Dress Down is going to show up again here. I think it's really funny as a combat trick. You attack with your 10-1.
Oh, they don't think you can do damage? Yeah.
Yeah, you attack with your 10-1, or if it's buffed, if you have like the
Excalibur,
Fire Shrieker, Excalibur, something huge. You flash an address down, you lose the abilities, kill them with commander damage.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah, you got to make sure it's at 11, because it's at 10 right now, right? So it's 11 plus double strike, or a way to get it just a straight 21.
Yeah.
But people will not see this coming for sure.
Hilarious. I did see a lot of people on Reddit talking about using Tishana's Tidebinder in this deck.
Oh, to make your commander lose the abilities.
And I want to mention that your commander, as written, doesn't have any triggered or activated abilities that you can counter with Tishana's Tidebinder. So you would have to like do something really weird to be able to give it a triggered or activated ability.
Right, with like an equipment or something.
Right. So Tishana's Tidebinder really doesn't do what you're trying to do in this deck, other than just is a good card that can interact with your opponents. This deck is silly and hilarious, and I hope you build it.
Yeah, notably, a lot of people are talking about, if you can get around this, if damage can't be prevented, like you can create an ability. However, blue doesn't have any ability that does that. Yeah. As far as we know, or colorless. So you'd have to, I think it's in a red, saying damage can't be prevented normally.
Yeah, if you're running a lot of those effects, Mindskinner's pretty hilarious. It's a 10-1 that now mills your opponents for 10 and deals 10 damage.
But it's still blue, so very hard to cast in non-blue decks.
Yeah.
So.
Tricky, but cool.
But fun.
Up next, Toby.
Beastie Befriender. It's kind of like, I thought this was Kona's like friend at first, but they just have Beast. They just both have Beast in their.
Yeah, this is just a different Beastie.
Yeah.
This is Toby.
This is definitely, by the way, a Pixar movie.
It's the cutest.
It's Monsters Inc. 1000%.
It's 2 and a white for a 1/1 human wizard. When Toby enters, create a 4/4 white beast creature token with this creature can't attack or block alone.
Aw.
No, he has to be with Toby. As long as you control 4 or more creature tokens you control have flying. There's 2 ways you can build this deck. You can build it as straight mono white tokens, just make a ton of tokens. They all have flying, ta-da.
Yep.
But I think the cooler way to build this and the more flavorful way to build this is with Blink.
Yeah, so notably the 4/4 that comes in is not legendary.
Yes.
So you can make as many of these fake friends, I guess.
Yeah. Imaginary friends.
Imaginary friends. Yeah.
Fake friends.
I mean, fake, imaginary.
Imaginary.
There's a Venn diagram of description that matches both of them.
I think there's like this sort of secret monster hiding under your bed thing that you can do here. I like Ephemerate is when he closes his eyes, he opens his eyes. There's more beasts.
Yeah, he
now.
goes back to sleep, and there's another one.
Conjurer's Closet is very monster in the closet, which is cute.
Teleportation Circle is just a teleportation circle.
Yeah, he summons his imaginary friends.
He's kind of like getting circled by something in this art here. So these actually have some sort of.
I mean, Toby is actually a wizard.
Yeah, there you go.
I even included some blinky beasts because he's the Beastie of Befriender. Felidar Guardian is perfect. Can blink Toby and make another beast. Fortune Loyal Steed is a beast that blinks. And Toby can ride him.
If you have Preston the Vanisher in here, everyone's going to start killing you because they're going to think you're going to go infinite with something.
But also, he's a cute imaginary friend that can make token copies of Toby, which makes even more beasts.
Yep. You don't care about the legendary rule in that case. You just get more beasts.
You're just after the beast.
Yeah, we already talked about Nesting Dovehawk is very good as well because now you're doing the whole populate thing. And mono white, we're in mono white, so we got to do things that mono white likes to do. So populate's a big one.
Yeah, Rootborn Defenses, even though new Master the Departed. Muster, you're right. Muster the Departed.
Colonel Muster the Departed in the living room. When it enters the battlefield, you make a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying, and it has Morbid as an enchantment at the beginning of your end step. If a creature died this turn, populate.
You got to have some sac effects going on, but that's fairly common in token decks just generally.
Yeah, and again, if you're doing like copying of Toby as well with legendary rule, that is a creature dying as well. So there's lots that you can do there.
There's always good ways to enhance when you're token making effects. We've talked about this a lot, but Panharmonicon is great. It's when you ETB, you make another beast. Anointed Procession, Delny comes back again here to make even more beasts.
Yeah, you can also play the new Elesh Norn that doubles, and that's more oppressive. And you're almost just the problem I found was a lot of these mono white decks is that once you start putting in the really powerful pieces from other decks, you start to become that deck. Yeah, if you're not careful, right? Mono
white blink decks can be control decks really, really fast. That's sort of why I like Toby as the helm, because he's a really good thing to blink. That is a proactive plan. Yeah, it's cute and it's fun, and
it's not shutting everyone down.
Yeah,
super hard.
When you're playing Elesh Norn, it's like everything that you put in the deck just makes sense to be a removal spell. You're just trying to play all of the Skyclave Apparitions and all of the Fiend Hunters in the world, right?
Yeah,
and that makes for a very powerful deck, but not a very proactive one.
Yeah, so be aware of when you start putting in, like, I found this happened to my Beza deck. It quickly became just the Graveyard Angel deck. And I was like, wait a minute, no, I'm trying to do something with Beza here.
Yeah.
So I feel like that pull is going to happen when you start building mono white.
You can also just put a bunch of tokens into the deck. Ocelot Prides and Oketra's Monument, Adeline. Just having a lot of tokens that all have flying is going to be a quick way to close out the game.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, one more. Oh, no, that's not
Two
true.
more.
We have two more.
Yeah.
This next one is spicy, though.
Yeah, don't skip on this one. This one is powerful. It's Winter, Misanthropic Guide. Winter got way more emo in this picture. 1 black, red, green for a 3/4 human warlock with ward 2. I thought they were going to stop doing that.
Nope.
At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws 2 cards. Wait, what?
Cool.
Delirium. As long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, each opponent's maximum hand size is equal to 7 minus the number of those card types.
Oof.
So, Delirium is at 4. 7 minus 4, each opponent's hand size is 3. Delirium can be higher than that.
Sure can.
Yeah, it's not
And
too difficult. You can probably get up to 5 and 6 pretty reliably, I think.
I have the Disa deck, which is designed to get your Delirium up pretty high.
Yeah.
And if you're playing Winter, you're doing basically the same thing.
Yeah.
You are trying to reduce your opponent's hand size to 0.
And Disa is also Jund, so there's
She is?
probably a lot of similarities in decks here, right?
I wanted to talk about Winter because the timing is a little bizarre. Winter gives your opponents additional cards on your upkeep, but immediately reduces their hand size. So you play Winter, you pass their opponent, their hand size is reduced to 1 or 2.
Yep.
They have to discard on that end step. So it creates this really weird thing where the player to your left is really motivated to remove Winter before their end step.
Yeah, otherwise they're the only player, or if they don't, then they lose their hand first, and if the next player removes it, then they're stuck.
Then they've discarded, and they're the only one who discarded.
Yeah, that's really bad for them.
So then if they don't remove Winter on their turn, they discard. The next player is also motivated to do it before end step. And if they don't do it, now they're like at the point where they really need Winter to survive.
Otherwise, the last player...
To draw those cards.
Right. Oh, to get back up. Right,
Yeah, because it's your upkeep. So now they're like, have to not defend Winter, because obviously he's not super fun, but really aren't interested in Winter being removed until you can get that benefit when you untap on your turn with
And
Winter.
you really want that last player to also discard the hand size.
Right.
Yeah.
So the politics and what the card does to the table is very bizarre because the timing, the turn order is completely determines how powerful the card is.
Yeah. Yeah, some people want it to die, and then at a certain point, they're like, no, it now needs to survive.
Yeah, not to mention the ward protects it. So, the player who does kill it also needs to spend half
More
their
mana.
turn removing this card.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's going to be one of those conversations where someone's going to go, I don't care at all, I'm fine to discard, or I'm just going to empty my hand, and other players are going to say, this is going to ruin my game entirely.
Right.
Now I really need to draw those cards with Winter.
So I wanted to mention that you can build Winter as sort of just a generic control shell. It's a very powerful commander. It draws a lot of cards. You can do a lot of 1-for-1s when you're drawing additional cards and you want to protect Winter. We're going to talk about more building around these abilities and making a more like sort of Nekusar style Winter deck.
Yeah.
Rather than a good stuff Winter deck. But that is completely on the table as well.
Well, I mean, this is the kind of deck that, again, will cause a lot of unhappiness. And so you do have to be careful in terms of how you're building it and the playgroups that you're playing it in and the way that you're building it for that playgroup if you care about that. Some people might not. Some people just want to see the world burn. But it's
the
Winter.
Lord of Pain.
The Lord of the Pain, yeah. So, ways to punish people. You have Children of the Apocalypse. So, at the beginning of your upkeep, each player is going to take an additional 4 damage.
And you're going to gain 4.
Yeah.
Orcish Bowmasters is absurd. You mean you get 6 triggers off the Orcish Bowmasters, not including the ETB. Spiteful Visions says at the beginning of each player's draw step, the player draws an additional card, and then whenever they draw a card, they deal 1 damage. So you can see we're doing these sort of Nekusar pinging when people draw effects. Zurzoth Chaos Rider is sweet.
Yeah, they make a bunch of 1/1s, right? When their opponent draws their first card each turn. So this will automatically trigger with Winter's first ability.
Yep, and then when you attack with it, there's like...
They draw a card,
force people to discard stuff. It's a nice way to defend yourself. I like that you have a bunch of devil tokens that like disincentivize people from attacking you, which they're going to want to do. If you're a maniac, you can include Chains of Mephistopheles.
I thought I would never see this card get played. It's here, though.
It's here. It says if a player would draw a card except the first one, he or she draws in their draw step each turn. That player discards a card instead. Uh-oh. If the player discards a card this way, they draw a card. What? If the player doesn't discard a card this way, they put the top card of their library into their graveyard. Huh?
So cards are going in and out of people's hands.
In and out and up and down and milling, and that means that your stuff is triggering a ton.
Yeah.
So Chains is one of those cards that works really, really well with draw punishment effects and discard punishment effects.
And the best part is you have to explain it to 3 players at the table simultaneously.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah.
We love it.
So we're discarding a bunch potentially in our deck as well, because drawing those extra cards will get you maybe over your hand size. So
this is whenever your opponent discards stuff.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was thinking of the other one. What's the...
Yeah, there's Waste Not, and then there's the one that cares when you discard.
Yeah.
I think the ones when your opponents discard are better in this because you're reducing their hand size, of course.
So yeah, Waste Not's very good here.
Yes, for sure.
I was thinking about the other one. Yeah, whenever an opponent discards a creature card, you make a 2/2. When they discard a land card, you add black. Whenever they discard a non-creature 9-land, you draw a card. So there's a good chance that if this makes it all the way around the table, you've drawn like 4 cards, made like 6 zombies.
It's
pretty
absurd,
nuts.
and it's 2 mana. I mean, Sangromancer is also the kind of card that I would put in this deck. I throw Sangromancer into decks that I just want life gain.
Yep, and it does a lot of work in that world.
And this one says whenever an opponent discards a card, you may gain 3 life. That's so much life. And then whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you may gain 3 life. You're going to get some people mad at you. They're going to be attacking you. You need a way to bolster your life total.
And it's always great to play Sangromancer, which often can become like we need to get rid of that immediately, as the second card that needs to get rid of. And that way it sticks around, more things are dying, more life is being gained, and you just get to hold on a little bit longer to that value.
When you have a lightning rod in the command zone, you should play more lightning rods.
Yeah. So the lightning can go to the other rods.
Yeah.
Megrim, 2 in the black enchantment. Whenever an opponent discards a card, it deals 2 damage to that player. What do you think? You're going to get hurt.
Yes, Grimoire. Whenever an opponent discards a card from their hand, you may draw a card. Oh no,
we made a Turgid deck.
It's Turgid. Yeah, this is Turgid in 3 colors, sort of. That draws more cards.
Yeah, and here's the thing: people, if you build it the right way, people won't realize until it's happened. Oh, I get a draw. I'm so happy. I'm not happy anymore.
I think this is the kind of deck that if you build it, your playgroup will play against it twice. And they'll be like, okay, we're done with that one, though.
Yeah. Or I have to hold removal plus ward 2 every single time. That's going to get tiring.
If it's your commander, it's a very difficult thing to get a lot of play out of if you're playing with the same people a lot.
Yeah, it's not group hug. It definitely can be quite mean. At the same time, maybe their hand size is only 3. And they get to keep
maybe it's fine.
Yeah, maybe it's fine.
I was looking at this deck and I was like, well, how would I build around this commander a little bit more? Because it is just so good stuffy that you're like, I mean, you can throw in all the gift cards that give people additional cards because the downside is so much, it's mitigated by the fact that they can't keep stuff at their
Yeah.
So if you play like Wear Down that says, I'll give them a card, you destroy target artifact or enchantment. If the gift was promised, destroy 2.
Yeah.
Like all of these, the Peerless Recycling, all of those feel so much better and less oppressive. Less punishing for you, the caster, when you know that they're discarding. Same with stuff like Saison, Perverter of Truth, or Font of Mythos that have your opponents drawing a ton of extra cards on their turns.
Yeah, I like this deck with the Howling Minds and all that stuff. So at the very least, yeah, sure, maybe you have to discard at the end of your turn, but you had a lot of options.
You have a ton of selection. I mean, it feels much more like a Nekusar list.
Yeah. And that in those worlds it does. The hand size thing is pretty brutal, but I think in more seasoned play groups, it's not going to be as feel bad. This definitely really, really feels bad for people that aren't as familiar with the game.
I agree.
In the same way that Mill feels bad for people that haven't played with it very much. They don't understand that it actually can be beneficial or it doesn't matter as much as they think it does.
Finally, if you're building this one and you want it to be as punishing as possible, you want to play to maximize your delirium. Use a lot of different creature types. Get your enchantments and your battles and your planeswalkers in there. And you want to be doing some amount of self-milling. Yeah.
So Palantir of Orthank's great. It punishes people life-wise if they don't let you draw the card, and it just continually ups the mill each turn.
Plus, it's an artifact, which is a little tricky to come by in this kind of deck. The new Barrogoyf is great. It scales with the stuff that's in your graveyard. It mills and it draws creatures, and it has lifelink.
Skull Prophet is amazing. It mills and it's just a Manador, Grizzly Salvage, Malevolent Rumble. These are all just ways to get stuff into the graveyard. Yeah, I like it.
A lot of cool things that you can do with winter, but again, be aware of the vibe that it will bring to the table.
Yes, it will not be summer. It will be winter. People will not be pleased.
Yeah, I don't know. In LA, everybody would be like, whoa.
Whoa. Yeah, as we get out of our 110 degree week here. Okay, last one today is Zimone All Questioning, starting with a Z. This is the non-commander precon Zimone. This one's in the main set and got a lot of attention because it's kind of a fun one.
I think it's neat.
Yeah, it's all about prime numbers. Do you guys like prime numbers? 1 green and a blue for a 1/1 human wizard at the beginning of your end step. If a land entered the battlefield under your control this turn, and you control a prime number of lands, create Primo, the Indivisible, a legendary 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, then put that many 1/1 counters on it. So if you have 2 lands, then you put 2, which is kind of tough with a 3-mana commander. You got 2, 2, 3, 5. They list out prime numbers. So 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29, and 31 are prime numbers. You will likely never get above 17.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really something if you got all the way up there.
Yeah, but end step, make a 13, 13, 11, 11. Pretty good.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
So, I was like, okay, I want 2 lands in play when I play Zimone.
Yeah.
It was the first thing I was thinking of. Is like if you run the depletion lands, like a Saprazan Scary, it comes in with 2 depletion counters on it, and you can tap it and add 2 mana. So you play that on turn 1. On turn 2, you play an untapped land. For the other source, you play Zimone. Now you're on your end step. She sees that you have 2, and you make a 2/2 right away.
Cool.
That's sweet. That gets you off to the races. You already have a Primo, and you can make it even bigger next turn.
Yeah, then you get a 3/3, and then the 5/5, and the 7/7.
Plus
Primo gets created each time, so it will see its legendary self and go, "Oh, sorry,
I'm already here."
Replaced. Yeah, I'm already here. But I'm bigger."
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "No, but that was prime too."
So Primo's going to do a lot of arriving and going away, and counters will be put on a thing, and then they will be sent to the graveyard. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was like how to preserve some of the value you're getting from the first Primos that you're making that are going to inevitably die to the larger Primos. And like the Ozolith is sort of the dream.
Right. The Primo dies, the counters go away, your next Primo is bigger and it gets the counters. You don't care that it's a new one. And if anything, maybe you also were able to swing with the old Primo and then you get an untapped Primo. Now it's kind of like it's got vigilance, but it's bigger.
Right. So ways to preserve the counters like the Ozolith or Death's Presence will go a long way. That's whenever a creature you control dies, put X+1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the power of the creature that died. So you're just saving it. You can put it on Zimone. You can put it on other creatures you have. Start preserving some of that value.
I'm kind of all about saving Primo by letting the legendary rule not apply.
I love this.
So Mirror Box is the newest version of this. Mirror Gallery was the original. Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. Copying either Primo or Zimone to make multiple Primos each turn is really where you're at. Because if you have the legendary rule replaced, then you can have multiple Zimones, multiple Primos, and your deck is just going to look like really bizarre.
It's so cool. You start messing with some real like timey math stuff in this deck.
Yeah, and you just have a huge board too, notably.
Something I saw online was Essex Fractal Bloom. Obviously, this is a fractal, so the themes go really well, but it says the first time you would create 1 or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex and create that many tokens that are copies of that creature. So now when you're making Primo, you can copy another creature instead of making a Primo, and now you make a token with counters on it on your end step.
Oh, very cool.
Which is sweet.
Yeah. And if you have the Mirror Box out thing, then you just make a ton of Primos.
Cool.
Primo.
There's also things that benefit from their death, like Tributary Instructor says whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card. Nice.
Yeah, that's kind of sweet.
Or one with the Kami, which is an aura that says whenever enchanted creature or another modified creature you control dies, create X/1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens where X is that creature's power.
Yeah, I'm big time down for one with the Kami because this turns your Primos into now spirits.
Bodies.
Yeah, bodies. And they're huge too. Well, you have a ton of them based on how many you're at. Okay. Let's talk about controlling your land count. Again, the prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. No, not 9. Sorry, I'm really bad at math. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. Let's say you're at 8 lands. You want to go down to 7. Well, good for you. We got Zurin Orbs in the house. We have Sylvan Safekeepers. Those are both creatures and an artifact that sack land to do stuff. Safekeeper's sweet because it protects things at the same time.
Yep. There's also a ton of Moonfolk that'll return lands to your hand so you can replay them next turn. You do need to make sure you have played a land that turn in order to trigger your commander. And you can only make one Primo a turn. So making sure that you make a Primo every turn is going to be a big deal in this deck.
Yeah, you
especially
want to, for sure.
When you're making the jump between 7 and 11. That's your biggest gap, and it's sort of the most accessible for you. So you want to hit on at least like 3, 5, and 7, but then you have to make a pretty big jump.
To get to 11.
Maybe
take a turn off. Yeah, that's tough. I am really glad that Wonderscape Sage is on this list, though, in Moloku, because I've always looked for places to play these cards.
And they're awesome here.
They're awesome, and they're finally, they're great. Because Moloku, you pay 1 to return a land to make a 1/1. And then Wonderscape Sage, you can tap to return the land, and you draw a card. Sweet.
Yeah.
You do get a discard, depending. But getting like land manipulation, especially in green-blue when you already are okay, you have tons of ways of ramping, tons of ways of getting more lands on the battlefield. This is like the extra small edge because Zimone's not that powerful. She's just making a sweet Primo every turn. So this is where you kind of like catch up, I think, advantage-wise to the rest of the table by having small, tricky things like this.
I like that this isn't just to dump as many lands as you possibly can onto the battlefield deck. This is like, it's a little bit finer where it's like you need to get from 5 to 7. You need to get 2 lands into play this turn. So it really makes you sort of think about the tempo of the deck in a very specific way. Because it's not always like every other number, then it's 4, then it's 2, then it's like...
Right.
It's difficult to actually control when the Primo happens, which is sweet.
Yeah, you get to have your own mini game basically, which is always fun because green blue can just become very the samey type stuff over and over again. So this adds some layers to that.
I like stuff like Awaken the Woods that puts a ton of lands into play.
Yeah.
That can make your big jump from like
7
to 11 or like 13 to 17. Just gives you that opportunity to bridge the gap and you're triggering your commander every turn, especially for those big numbers.
Yeah. And then you're probably going to be running your growth spiral type effects in here just to get more ways to draw a card and put it out. You have Uro. Stuff like that just allows you to get more lands out quickly, especially if you're going to be drawing a lot too. The original Zimone, Quandrix Prodigy, has an ability to put lands from your hand onto the battlefield and a way to draw cards. That's a little slow, but again, just ways to, manipulate the land count at instant speed is always powerful.
Yeah. Finally, I wanted to talk about some power matters stuff. You're going to be making a ton of counters. You're going to be making some big stuff. So figuring out how to take advantage of what value your commander does give you is really powerful.
Important. Yeah.
So Kodama of the West Tree gives your modified creatures trample. Great. Primo could use it. And then it turns Primo into an opportunity to get more lands on the battlefield.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge by ramping them out. Even the original Kodama as well lets you put more lands out too, which is good. So you probably can find space for both of them.
Yeah.
Bristly Bill is going to be great in this deck because doubling the 11/11 Primo that you have to 22/22 or even 5/5 to 10/10, right? Those are all big time numbers. And if they have trample or just evasion, then you're really going to be able to get them for good damage.
One I really like is Polywog Prodigy. I think Evolve is sick in this deck.
Oh, right.
So this is a 2-mana 1/3 with Evolve. It's whenever a creature you control enters, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a counter on this creature. So you're making bigger and bigger things. You can trigger Evolve super easily.
All the time, yeah.
And it says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell with mana value less than Polywog Prodigy's power, draw a card. So it's a 1/3. The first Primo comes down, it's going to be a 3/3 and is going to evolve. And the next Primo makes it bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Makes this card really sweet and synergized. Plus, it's got those +1/+1 counter synergies with Kodama and Bristly Bill.
And you're going to draw a lot of cards because whenever an opponent casts a non-creature with mana value less than Polywog's power, draw a card. So this is up to
good.
Even if this is at like power 3 or 4, you're probably going to draw a decent amount off it. And like we talked about lightning rods, no one's going to look at the Polywog Prodigy and go, that thing has to go.
Yeah, it's sick.
Early on, at least. Power Fist I really like in this deck. Whenever this equipped creature has trample and whenever it deals combat damage, put that many 1/1 counters on it.
Sweet.
So that's how Primo really becomes big boy buff Primo.
That's science.
That is science. Yeah.
Speaking of greater good, we mentioned it earlier. It's a really, really great way to turn Primo into value and not just sacrifice him to the legendary rule.
Yeah, that's huge, actually, because once you get past, let's say, 5, then greater good is card positive, right? Yeah.
It's an interesting thing to control the exact number of lands you have. Like, I was looking at cards like Traverse the Outlands.
Oh, yeah.
And this is interesting. It's search your library for up to X basic land cards where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Put those onto the battlefield. it usually will put like 7 cards into play.
Right.
But you're going to skip a couple of prime numbers on the way, so I'm not sure how good it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be good to jump once you get to the 7 and you don't care anymore.
You sack it down to 7.
Yeah, I'm going to get somewhere to a point where I'm going to hit another prime number. I don't care. I'm just going to have a ton of lands. I'm just going to get everything out and I never have to worry about lands anymore. Or you're sitting at, let's say, 15 lands and now you can do the Zeranorb thing. Mm-hmm. So I like it a lot, I think. Because once Primo gets big, it's nuts.
And all of these counter doublers and that kind of stuff is really, really powerful. Like green-blue is good at 2 things, and it's lands and +1/+1 counters, and this deck can take advantage of both. I don't usually like Simic Ascendancy. That's the one that like when you get counters,
you win the game. Yeah.
You win the game. But in this deck, I do think you can pretty quickly turn Simic Ascendancy into a win con. It's like 2 primos.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Green-blue, this really fits with the Zimone theme. It feels like you're doing a math problem.
It does.
So if you want to play a green-blue game that is not your normal green-blue game, that has a little more tricksiness, a little more fun involved, a little more mini games, then this Zimone feels like exactly that.
I agree.
And it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, that's for sure. But for the people that do like this, it's going to be like one of their favorite commanders, I think.
Yeah. This is the first like green-blue landfall deck that I've looked at and was like, this might be interesting to play.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Those are the ones we're talking about in the episode today. But before we go, we're going to talk about the commanders that really stuck out to us, starting with our favorite commanders from the episode.
Yeah, I think my favorite would probably be Master of Keys. I like Escape Enchantment in Esper. Just like new things. You don't really we haven't seen this before. You have to build around it. You have to do things that it's one of my favorite kind of commanders. Like the commander itself has a ton of text on it, and the powerful stuff you can do with it, you get to choose what enchantment direction you go. So I like that. I like being the Master of Keys.
Yeah, this is a neat one. You can go in a lot of different directions for it, and the precon that it's built around is awesome.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is gonna be Toby. I have never found a mono white or a blink commander really that I like, and I love the flavor of this one. I like how fun it is, and you get to make these big 4/4s, which are great to populate, and I can't wait to see the token. It's,
on Toby.
Yeah.
Making flowers, yeah.
Like, how many 4/4s do you need before that's a very serious threat? If you have 4 4/4s and you have 16 power that flies.
They're all flying, yeah.
Gross. Pretty sweet.
You're cruising at that
So
point.
I may look at a list for Toby and see if we can make it. I want to put all the beasts in it. I looked up all the mono white
Yeah,
beasts.
there you go. Yeah, so you got some fun flavor as well as not. Yeah, it's right in that nice sweet spot of power. Most powerful commander, speaking of, I'm going to go with Kona Rescue Beastie because mono green I'm just thinking of the Vorinclex route with this, really. You can get Vorinclex out on turn like 2 or 3, basically,
it's
right?
It's a 4-drop, so if you get some way
if you mana vault turn 1.
Or like if you play Springleaf Drum on turn 1, you play a rock on turn 2, just any 2-mana rock, and then you play Kona and you can tap it right away, so it's turn 3.
Yeah.
Any permanent.
I think with like a Jeweled Lotus, you can definitely turn 2 it, but there are ways to just make this be, turn 2 Blightsteel. And so I think that for that reason, the Kona Rescue Beastie is going to get the +1 from me for most powerful.
I agree. I think that's going to be the commander that's super, super fast and is going to flag a lot of threat. I wanted to talk about Winter here because I do think that in terms of like what it does to the game, Winter has so much top end.
It warps the whole thing entirely.
It just takes the whole game in his fist and is going to really impact any game it's a part of. So I will nominate Winter for most powerful here as well. You can do some cool stuff, but also make people big mad.
And he's an outlaw.
I did put out a poll on Winter, and I was like, do we think he's fun? Do we think he's not fun? Does he just die to removal and it's all fine?
Survey says
50% said it was fun and fine. 25% said dies to removal. So I have to kill it, and it won't stand the battlefield.
They're that player,
And then 25%-ish said that they did not want to play against it. So it was like literally half and half.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the first half will change their minds after they play it.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to see how Winter grows in the format. It's really interesting card design, but I do think it's going to be pretty oppressive.
Yeah, and notably, you do have to have Delirium.
Yeah,
so
it's not super easy.
It could be played, and everyone's just drawing cards, and they're all in for it, and then you have that turn where all of a sudden it's like, okay, now I'm going to put a Lightning Greaves on Winter, and hit Delirium for 7.
That's true,
right?
You could absolutely slow roll the Delirium and play the group hug game and hope your opponents don't plan ahead.
Yeah.
But there's some cool stuff going on in this set. A lot of different flavor, a lot of fun things. To the listeners, which commanders do you think are the most powerful in the set? Did we talk about them today? Did we miss any that you wanted to talk about? Leave a comment below. We'll have the conversation, see if other people wanted to talk about any of those cards. Of course, if it's one of the face commanders, check out our pre-con upgrade guides. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about those commanders. So don't miss out. We will be covering those as well.
All right.
Yeah,
leave comments. It's always fun to have the comment section go on these because, again, there are so many cards. We can't cover them all. We'd love to hear what you have to say about them as well. And you can also continue the conversation on social media. Have you heard of social media? It's clearly a net positive for the world. All right, moving onwards. If you want to pick up any of these cards, check out the website like cardkingdom.com/command to pick up all of the new pre-cons, any of the singles, sealed product that you're looking for from Duskmourn, or maybe you want to go back in time and there's still stuff that you have missed out from the fetch lands, for instance, from Modern Horizons 3, or any of the Bloomburrow stuff. Great gifts for people depending on what their flavor of love is. You're going to have Duskmourn fans in your life and you're going to have Bloomburrow fans in your life, and both of them now can be fans of Magic. So cardkingdom.com/command. We trust them to get our decks together for stuff like Game Nights Live and for our personal collections. And the best part is you get all of the cards in a single package delivered to your door while supporting the show. So cardkingdom.com/command.
And once they're in your hand, you're going to need to protect them, keep them safe. Go to ultrapro.com/command, pick up the highest quality Magic accessories in the business. They've got binders and sleeves and deck boxes and plushies and card sorters, everything that you need to be a well-accessorized Magic player. I just did a huge resort of my cards, and
really,
oh my gosh, were the black sorter things.
Sorter trays, let's go.
Life-changing.
So good.
So get some new binders, make sure that your cards are taken care of and looking cool while they do so at ultrapro.com/command.
All right, big thanks to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. We got Eric Lem, Rachel Kendrick, Gaurav Galati, Jamie Block, Jordan Pridgeon, Jake Boss, Josh Murphy, Manson Lung, Karina Cruz, Jared Robinson, Sebastian Salazar, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, and Josh Lee Kawhi.
Bye.
That's it, everyone. See you next time. Go Duskmourn. Woo!
For your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.